It's now streaming.
Are you, okay, because it's still redirecting here. Is streaming?
Streaming.
Okay, good. It is moved by Councillor Mallette and seconded by Councillor Duhaime. Be it resolved that the agenda for the budget meeting of Council held on March the 1st, 2021 be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Adopted. So I want to welcome each and every one of you to our first budget deliberation meeting. As a matter of fact, it's going to be the third budget of this council, le troisième budget pour le conseil. We're starting deliberation. Earlier in January, when it was brought forward, council agreed to obtaining as much information as possible to facilitate the decision-making process and to have the current numbers or the actual numbers with the documentation that was provided to us. I want to say a big thank you to staff, head of departments, senior management, our CEO, or Director of Corporate Services for putting all of this together for us. Donc, un grand merci à vous tous. I'd like to reiterate, as I do every year, that the most important task, la tâche la plus importante of council, is to be able to set a budget, and the budget provides direction on priorities to be worked on for the year that the budget is being dealt with. Now, in the previous two budgets, just as a quick overview for past budgets, I know that 2019, we had an increase of nearly 6%. However, we did have major undertakings such as the IPM, the police transition. And that year, we also had a state of emergency pertaining to the flood. In 2020, then we had a worldwide pandemic where we had to set up an assessment center for COVID testing, which had a major impact on our operation and the delivery of services for various departments. That increase was slightly over 4%. And this year, while we do know that we have also pressures and challenges, the pandemic, COVID, has not gone, and also the impact pertaining not just to the assessment center, but also to the rollout distribution of the vaccine, which probably will involve the municipality greatly, with many helping hands to be able to proceed with that initiative. And we also know the impact pertaining to lockdowns that have occurred in the last 12 months and the hardship that it's created for everyone, our small businesses and our residents. So our starting point will be 6.7%. Council has the option to either approve status quo as presented. However, there's also other options, and I'm sure and confident that council will want to do their due diligence to approve what is priorities and needs for 2021. And based on that, we have a calendar of set dates. Thank you to staff for offering another option of going daytime, de pouvoir avoir des rencontres de jour. This way it provides more flexibility, and also due to the circumstances, we still need to proceed by video conferencing. Last year, a 1% increase equaled approximately 168,000. This year, I'm not too sure if it's going to be the same amount or if that amount has changed, but throughout the process, members of council do have the opportunity to ask questions to obtain clarification, and all of this to be able to facilitate the decision-making process so we can get to a budget for this year. So without undue delay, we were provided with a memo along with a budget deliberation plan and the workbook for the 2021 budget. So if there's no further comments, what I'll do at this point, s'il n'y a aucun autre commentaire à ce point-ci, I'll pass it on to our CEO for the introductory pertaining to the documentation provided and to proceed with the overview.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and members of council, and a pretty thorough opening. I don't know that I have a ton else to add. I will say a little bit like in my memo, so I'll just talk a little bit informally to start. I think you touched on the fact that well, we're normal times and business as usual. We don't even know what business as usual looks like anymore. We've been, faced with this and continue to face it for 2021, for the better part of 2021 anyway. So thanks for that. Thanks to staff and the communications team for putting this together. I'll make a few points and hopefully not reiterate or make any political points, but I think what our present environment has given us right now anyway is what we've been working with council and staff, with staff throughout the 7 or 8 months is we're into how do we keep going? What business services do we need to continue offering? And what do we need to have to continue offering these services once all of this mayhem it ends. And so what will we look like on the other side? So this budget and the work that staff have done have put forth some options, or not some options, but a draft budget that contemplates business continuity, business retention, business continuity. And so thanks to the Senecal as well, the starting number isn't 6.7. I believe it's slightly over 6.8. We had forgotten to put an insurance part in the general government. So thanks for catching that. So our starting point, which is much lower than normal, is around 6.8. And I've been saying this, and councillors conceptually agree, but when you see a number in writing, it always gets scary. But that 6.8 is a number to start a workbook. It's really council after that to look at what policies they'd like to amend and what strategic directions they would like to change. And that 6.8 can go to 14.9 or it can go to minus 40. Who knows? It's up to council to decide. And I think that, Elisa is going to have the floor for the most part today, because our goal today is to go through general government and the related services with general government. And then if we can get some of the obvious ones out of the way, such as the boards and that, it might be a little bit presumptuous or ambitious, but if we can get through that today, then we'll be fine. The one difference I think makes more sense, and hopefully you've all received your capital workbook. It would have been sent out about 11:30 today. It's not, Elisa's section is not as capital intensive, but when we get into community services and public works and fire, obviously it gets a little bit more capital intensive. So what we're going to be doing is department by department, because in the departmental presentation, you have at the end all of this financing mumbo jumbo and what does it add up to or agree to. So we're going to have the capital go with that so that you can see what is involved in general government, what is involved in public works, what is involved in community services. And I think it's more logical to do it that way. And so, again, this is a bit, this is not a time where we're really looking forward or looking at making major changes in our operations, because there's too much uncertainty to do that. And the other thing that council needs to be aware of is that you've approved and we've been able to finally get going on an operational review. And so before we start making all kinds of assumptions here at the table, we're going to have some data that will come into us that may, have council make some changes based on the data that the operational review will be bringing in, and that should be forthcoming in the upcoming months. So with that, I don't know if, the other thing I just wanted to say, is that I think that this year, it's much more fruitful. You have to understand that the line item budgets that are provided to us, are vetted and triple vetted and that kind of thing. I think where council provides staff much more added value is in policy discussions as to where you want to have emphasis in your expenditures and what we can do to, adjust budgets accordingly to help you get there. I think and of course, obviously, what the expenditure levels are overall, and what you can, what you can tolerate, I suppose, and whatever that number is, our staff are able to adjust things based on your assumptions. So I don't know if there are any comments prior to passing it off to Elisa, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I see Councillor Lees.
Okay, just a very short question. Yes, we did receive the workbook this morning around 11:30. I'm not sure. Thank you very much. But because of that, I don't like and I do agree that when we go, for example, whichever department, that we should discuss the budget and also the capital budget at the same time and ask question and get it over with that one and go to the next one. So we won't get mixed up in the project. Trying to ask question in, for example, public work, and then go back to economic development and ask question about public work. So I think it's a great idea to do it that way. But for today, I don't think we can discuss any capital because I didn't have a chance. I know I'd received it, but I was getting prepared for this meeting, which I think the beginning of every process is very important. So my concentration for myself was on the meeting today. So I don't think it would be fair to ask us to discuss the capital project before we have a chance to look into it and to be able to ask our input. And also, I want to state that just going through what we're going to go through today, I will be asking from some reports. So also, it will give an opportunity to staff to get prepared, because if we have all the information, and I don't know if everybody was going to agree with us, it's going to be a lot more easier for us to make a fast decision and a good decision also. So thank you, Jay. I really appreciate that. So.
Sure. So I'll take your comments, and they're certainly valid. The only slight adjustment that I may try, and if it doesn't work, certainly we're not going to be going through something that is not understand it, or you should have received the document first. In my opinion, general government's capital is quite minimal, so it really won't. I don't. Yeah.
And I'm ready for that because that's my committee.
So and anything else though, absolutely. The big ones where you're spending, roads and this and that and the other thing, certainly it was never our intention to have that discussion today. So your point's well taken.
And I'm saying that I'm ready for the corporate services also, because I know that was my.
Yeah, no, and
but it was not part of the, sorry, Jay, it was not part of the agenda. Like, it was just a presentation. And so that's why I was saying that.
Thanks.
And we got it faster, the workbook, because you said sometime by the middle of the week, and we're just the beginning of the week. So
yeah, so good. So yeah, like I said, so the introduction, Elisa will say where we are now and what that means. She'll talk about last year and talk about what the overage is and explain that away, hopefully. Talk about what our present starting position is with our reserve position or debt position. So I think before you start any budget, you need to know where you are now. And so Elisa will do a great job doing that. And then we'll get into the general, the general government, the corporate services, and then leading into everything that, the COVID issues and so on and so forth. So Elisa's a good start. And then we'll see where we get to by the end of today, and determine what will happen on Wednesday. So without any, Joanne, so go ahead.
Just before passing it on to Alyssa, I see that Chris had his hand up for quite a while. I just want to see what are the comments or questions of Councillor Chris.
Thanks.
Okay, so I just have one question, and it's probably it's for Elisa. Gamble. So I know last year NPAC we're going to do reassessments. It was scheduled, or maybe I'm confused, the year before, but that got put on hold because of COVID, and I know that has an impact. I'm just wondering, just as an underlying sort of assumption, is that taking place this year? Is it likely to? Is it not going to take effect? So all those kinds of things. Can you just get us up to speed on that, please? And thank you.
Okay. So is it fair that we can pass it on to Alyssa and at the same time throughout our presentation, provide the information pertaining to your question, Councillor Chris?
Yeah, I,
Okay.
and my recommendation is to, unless there's some really good discussion on a specific point, it would probably be good for her to go through operations and that, and then have a whole list of questions and have the discussion, just so she doesn't get thrown off her flow. So, I can answer the impact question now, but, I think it's better if it goes into the context once that discussion happens, like the mayor was suggesting. So Elisa, we'll try our best that way, but certainly we don't want to stymie policy and discussions if they come up. So go ahead, Elisa.
I'm sorry,
Alice?
just for Alicia, just to make sure, you gotta follow Alicia page 12, 13 and 14, from 11 to 14 in your discussion, so we can have it right in front of us.
So I'm going to try to do a share screen and put them up on the screen. And then I'm
Okay,
going to try to talk and move a screen at the same time, and we'll see how that goes.
Just don't,
okay, thank you very much.
just don't chew gum then.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe not too fast.
I know.
I already
Okay.
told Joanne, I already told her half speed, Elisa, half speed. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Elisa.
All right. So I'm going to start with the sharing the screen here then. Yeah, I said I'm going to try to share the screen, talk slow, and look at my documents all at the same time. So I'm going to start you actually on page 10. There. And we are just going to sort of, I'm not going to go line by line through here, but the summary of categories, it gives you the overview of both where 2020 is ending and the overview of where 2021 is going. And so the first page takes you through the sort of operating dollars and then down into the surplus dollars. And what I want to look at here is that surplus and deficit line that we have at the bottom there, and just talk a little bit about things that happened in 2020. As Mayor Savage and Jay already discussed, obviously COVID is the talk of everything. So a portion of that surplus is actually COVID relief funding that we received from the province. So we received this almost $1 million of COVID relief funding to offset against lost revenues and increased expenses that were attached to our operations related to COVID. And so, council will recall that we almost had a budget, and then COVID became the global pandemic, and the world all changed. And we actually went back and reset our 2020 budget with a little bit of a reflection of what might happen under COVID, without any idea of where things were actually going to go, because it was all new here. So what happened in the end is, what I've looked at is where revenues usually have been over the last sort of 4 years, not including 2020, in both community services and general government. And we've looked at those things like lost revenue from rentals, from ice skating, penalties and interest, lottery licensing, those types of things that were dramatically impacted by COVID. And so in the surplus is actually almost $640,000 that's connected to the fact that we've recognized this funding relief for lost revenue. 273,000 connected to community services, 168,000 connected to general government, and there's actually almost 200,000 of straight COVID expenses, most of which is our assessment center. But there are other things that roll into that. So some of the IT upgrades we had to do, certainly cleaning supplies in all the departments, PPE that was provided. So that's what that's sort of almost 640 of COVID relief. Now we do still have COVID relief funds that you will see applied in 2021, both to the assessment center and to community services, again, to use up the remaining of the balance that we were allocated for that. And again, when we started looking at doing that rejig on the COVID budget in 2020, we knew facilities were going to be closed for a little while. We dropped our hydro costs a little bit. But we ended up having substantially more hydro savings than we anticipated, back in April of 2020. A lot of that comes out of community services, a combination of having facilities closed and having changes to the time of use rates that were available in the province. So the bulk of the hydro savings comes out of community services, a little bit from public works and general government, again, just related to that time of use. Our facility here also had our tenant out of the building for a good bit of the year, which certainly would have assisted a little bit. Fuel costs from our heavy users also. So again, we clawed back fuel costs a little bit in 2020 in reflection of the fact that we knew we were kind of not really COVID related, but at the same time, when the world oil prices tanked and fuel dropped down under a buck a liter again, and we all kind of cheered a little bit. So we actually ended up with almost $76,000 worth of fuel savings between public works and fire as sort of our big users of fuel. Community services had some savings in facility maintenance. Again, when we were doing that plan of what can happen during COVID period, we ended up with contractors not able to be in our buildings for much longer than we anticipated. So there was some savings there that contribute to that 1.5 million. Another big chunk is actually HR costs. And some of that is that we had planned some late quarter hiring for community services and general government that didn't occur. We had some full year hirings for public works that we hired very late in the season. But again, with shutdowns running far longer than we had anticipated back in April of last year, we actually incurred greater savings on our part-time staff than we anticipated at budget time last year. And the last really surprising thing is that when we were looking at, again, that COVID budget and what could possibly happen and how long shutdown was going to go on and things like that, we actually kind of clawed back revenue in building and planning, because building and planning was shut down last spring as well. They kind of knocked it out of the park. Once they were allowed to open up again, they actually exceeded their budget in revenue by $93,000. So all of that I just kind of run through accounts for $1.4 million of the 1.56 surplus that you see. So, and again, a lot of it ties to just that unpredictability of what was going to happen during COVID and how we budgeted and how things actually rolled out and how long we were shut down. So that's kind of the highlights on where we sat. A couple other things that sit in there, just so that they don't show up as well on the statements. If we had not applied the COVID relief funding to community services actually would have missed its revenue marks for 2020, despite us clawing them back in that COVID budget. So again, it hit community services far greater than we anticipated back sort of in April and May of last year. And to Councillor Fisher's point, I'll talk about it now, but I'll talk about it more during what 2021 looks at. You'll see in property taxation, we actually didn't hit our property taxation line in 2020, and that has to do with supplementals not being recognized. So MPAC's operations were certainly impacted through 2020. I anticipate them to continue to be impacted through 2021. And part of that is the new assessment rollout that we will talk about later. But because they weren't able to get out and do inspections in order to grab those supplemental billings, they didn't have any of their inspectors back on scene till October. So we actually did fairly well considering the year that we had an MPAC had, that we got a lot of our supplementals and omits picked up, which means a lot of those properties from prior years were picked up, but certainly we lagged behind where we usually do, and I expect that will continue.
Lisa,
Yes.
I don't know if you're going to ask, but perhaps I can make a comment on picking up construction and having an increased assessment based on new builds versus, I think, what Chris is talking about in terms of reassessment. I would just say to Chris that reassessment doesn't necessarily come to play in determining our expenditure levels. What it does is it just changes the tax rate. So let's say our assessment increased quite a bit, our notional tax rate would be reduced accordingly so that it would match the existing levels of 2020. We would not be grabbing the additional taxation by increased assessment unless we actually needed it for operations. Is that a fair statement, Elisa, that you want to expand on?
Yeah. So again, when we look at 2021, what sometimes happens in years where we have a large sort of reassessment of properties, we actually end up with our tax rate actually ends up decreasing. And we've seen that in prior years, even though we're getting more tax. But yeah, in the 2020, what we're seeing is supplementals, and we will talk about what MPAC is doing in 2021 and why that impacts us. Yeah. And an answer, I'm not sure if it came from Ms. Vaj or Councillor Senecal, 1% is 177,000 this year, just so you've got that number with you. Now, the summary of revenue and expenses, the next couple of pages are really the same thing. Oops, wrong screen here. Just in a different format. So you can sort of see some of the departments, all the same information we just sort of talked on where things are and what impacts the different departments are tied up in there. And then, it comes to the same bottom line there. So I'm going to, I think I did that right. There we go. We're going to skip ahead, just sort of also still looking at where we are at, to the appendices section. So page 47. And I apologize, Jay and I were discussing sort of last week. I'm old, so I'm yelling at my screen because I need you to hear me as I yell at my screen, even though I don't really need to yell.
Forty-seven is appendix?
Yes, yep. And so then flip to the next page on 48 there.
So Elisa, just a comment as well. Sorry, I just want to make, because we're starting off, but I want to make sure at the sections that you present that that either we'll discuss in detail, like when you're looking at variances per department or whatever. Obviously, those will be discussed per department, but I want to make sure that you ask the question, if there's any comments at certain levels, so that
Sure.
we get to make sure that everybody has not acceptance, but that they've received the information properly. Thanks.
When we look at the general, sorry, Councillor Senecal.
So does it mean that we can ask question on the 3-page that's what you had presented so far, Alicia?
I would lose so that you don't lose the thought. If there's some issues that you want to talk about overall, let's deal with it and get past it. Okay.
So we're gonna ask questions. So Madam Mayor, is back to you, I guess, or Alicia, or who's gonna go around? How are you gonna do that?
Well, you know what, the complexity here is I can see the screen pertaining to the documents, but then I cannot see any other participants at this point. So my understanding is we're proceeding. Well, you know what? I totally agree that there's going to be questions pertaining to what has been presented so far, but do we back up? And I don't know. I need some advice here because I can only see the screen pertaining to the worksheet.
Okay, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I think we should go, what you have to do and understand, because I don't see the screen either, is that you go around like you usually do. And if we have question or comment, no, Jay, you're shaking your head. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would just basically, it's a working session. And so if we can on this one, Elisa, I would go back to the 3 pages and then let, and it may not be chairing 101, but if Lise has a question, just let her raise the question. If there are too many in a row, then we'll figure it out. But we can pretty much figure it out. We don't have to go. If somebody doesn't have questions, I don't want to waste a lot of dead space. But Lise, if you have a question on the first 3 pages, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand, Jay, but if somebody else have a question, you see me, but you don't see the other one that's going to raise their hand. So that's,
well, they may have they may just verbalize it.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem going ahead, and everybody will have their question. If you raise your hand, they're going to say something if you don't see them, right? Okay, I do have a question, and I have a few questions, and I want to thank Alicia first to have answered the question that I had sent pertaining to the corporate services, but there are some that have to do with the rest. That's what we're talking. So I'm going to go ahead and say what I would like to see to help me when we get to committee and with on top of the information that Alicia had provided. So if we go as revenue, for example, what I would like to see, and I saw the portion of corporate, but altogether to see every grant that we had received this year in 2020, I should say, and the amount that we had received and if anything was spent was in which department. So that way we will have, and for the rest of the session for every department, if we have that right now, like at the beginning. And also I would like to see the COVID, which is included in the report of grant. And I will now go to, I would like to see the activity report for some of the departments that we need to see. And one is, for example, I think it's the bylaw, not the bylaw, is it the bylaw officer? Does it call that? Yeah, I think bylaw services. I don't know if it's the name for it. And an activity on that, and also on the animal control to make sure that we know what, because the amount are kind of not maybe big, but it's there, and I would like to see what we're getting for our money. So, and I will avoid asking that question when we get there. And then another thing, and that might be, I don't understand, so it's just a clarification question. What is the difference between are we there on page 11 yet? What is the difference between capital infrastructure and capital expenditure? Which I don't know what it is, so that's very simple. I don't know. So I don't know if it can be provide clarification right now. Don't need a report on that, obviously. And yeah,
Can I stop you?
Excuse me.
You have a question. Maybe you should ask one question and then get a response, or because
well, okay.
Well,
so I think the report, Jay, the report is.
Let me finish, because you just asked for an explanation on capital expenditure structure. And capital expenditure, what's the difference? So that is the type of things that I would suggest is why I stopped, so that Elisa can explain right now. Okay, so there don't need a report on that. Elisa,
no, that's exactly what. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and then we can move on, so that Elisa.
Is it?
Yeah,
so I don't have to go. Well, I just want to rephrase then what I asked. I asked for some report, which I know that's not going to happen today, obviously. And the only specific question that I asked was what she's going to be answering right now, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so finish that question and then I can respond to the other ones, Elisa.
Okay.
So capital.
Okay. Oh,
capital infrastructure is related to public works. So their roads, and actually their garage that supports their roads. So it's related to the roads, and capital expenditure is everything else. With everybody's fleet, all the community services work, things like that sit in the other one.
Okay, that was simple. Thank you very much. So Jay, you want to talk about the report?
Yes, I do. I think that what I want to do is, if we start running around everywhere, I want to ensure the council actually supports the request. So perhaps when we get to the different area, because today we're going to get to animal control, and then we're going to get to bylaw, and we'll see if it's needed in terms of determining a budget level or whatever. And if it is, once you make that request, if the majority of council agrees that they need that report, we'll go ahead. If not, and they're fine with what we have, then we'll move forward. So, unless you want to have a vote right now and see if those reports are actually needed. I understand that you want to see an activity report with respect to, I'll cite animal control as medium, and I think it's a very fair question given the service or lack of service that we're receiving. But we're in the middle of a contract, and so it won't really change the budget deliberation, but it certainly is a discussion in terms of what should be on a council agenda, to be discussing it at a council agenda to see, in terms of oversight, are we getting what we should be getting, kind of thing. But So at this point, I would want to make sure that if we're having everybody asking us for all kinds of reports, that it's actually council as a whole or a majority of them that actually need them and not one or two.
May I comment on that, Madam Mayor?
Okay, you know what, this would really help if maybe the worksheet, is there no opportunity for the worksheet to be minimized to allow these discussions and see if there's other questions? Good, thank you. Yes, Councillor Lise.
Okay, I just want to add, obviously, I was not expecting that people will just because I asked for it, I'm going to get it on a golden plated. So I was not expecting that. I'm expecting to go around the table. And I think the rationale beside that, you're talking about the animal control, for example, Jay, we're right on budget deliberation, but 2020 is over. So they must have submit because even if they have COVID, I'm sure they work anyways. If they don't work, then we're going to have a credit for the services. So we should be able to have received a report on animal control and also on the bylaw side of it, because 2020 is over 3 months, almost 2 months now. So, and I'm not expecting to make that decision. I was just saying what I would like to see, because I don't want to go through and having to go back and ask for questions that we will have in the report. So I think it's very important information that I'm asking, and I'll go obviously when there's a vote. If council doesn't want it, if they want it, they don't want it, that's fine. If they want it, but Mike might say that I will be very hard for me to approve something and some of the things that I'm asking if I don't get all the information that I feel that I request to make a good decision.
Yeah. Point taken.
Thank you.
So are there other questions on what Elisa has presented with the general overview of last year? What she's presented so far?
Well, I had maybe question pertaining to HR, but I'm just looking to see if there's a show of hand pertaining to questions. None? Okay. If I may ask the question, I know that on the page 10 HR cost, we underspent, but we underspent for a variety of reasons. So I was just looking to find out, how many individuals, employees within the municipality had their work interrupted or laid off due to COVID. If there was any separation of employment, maybe we're aware that we had some voluntary departures and positions that were pre-approved in 2020, additional complement. Which one were filled, which one were not filled. That would give me an understanding of exactly why we underspent, and at the same time, why we're asking more. Well, then there's going to be details provided by the department head.
Is that so? I think those are appropriate questions. Is that something, Elisa, that could be answered on a roll up now? Or would it be within everybody's presentations as to where to answer that? But definitely, if you're presenting a big picture, I think the mayor has conceptually, a good point there.
Yeah, I can give you some of that, and certainly the departments, when we get there, we'll probably sort of flesh it out if my answer doesn't cover all the ground there. So so positions that were approved and did not get filled or got filled late. So we had approved in the 2020 budget a full-time mechanic under Public Works. That position was filled, but it was filled at the very end of 2020. So there was a lot of 2020 that position was vacant. Community Services had a fourth quarter hire approved for a Community Services coordinator, and that position did not get filled in 2020. They did fill their foreman position or sub-foreman position, but it also was filled late in the year. General government had that, it was sort of that special projects person that was to be hired for dealing with, the strat plan and the operational review and those things like that. And so as that kind of got put on hold, that position hire got put on hold. There would have been grant revenue offsetting that position. So the grant revenue also didn't get recognized. So those were the ones that were sort of, not not hired in the year that were sort of approved positions. Certainly during COVID, all of our part-time staff, including our lifeguards, were laid off. They were all recalled. So we didn't have any sort of terminations regarding related to COVID. But like I said, sort of in the earlier preamble, some of them ended up on layoff longer than we sort of anticipated when we started the whole process. And then they came back and sort of, you know, the pool, when the pool reopened, the pool reopening looked very different from it did before. And we didn't have swing lessons and some of those things that would have usually had our lifeguards very, very busy through that. Certainly we had some voluntary departures that didn't get filled, the museum being a big one, that both individuals at the museum left during the COVID period. And because the museum was closed, we did not refill those positions. Did I get all those questions?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And just to clarify, General Government Special Project, that was one individual and I got all the projects. But was that position to be a contract or a term? And
Yes.
it was paid through the grant and not COVID grant, but another grant. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So then we can move to the appendices then. So I just want to make sure, Lisa, that at the reserve part, blah, blah, so that everybody clearly, understands, and if there are any questions at that point, so that every counselor's on the same page moving forward.
Are we voting now if we're getting the report that I requested, Jay, or we should wait till after?
Well, I think that it'd be if you get the information when it happens, Councillor Seneca, and you're not satisfied at that point, then you can ask that now, or whatever. You can vote to see if you need it now, but I think people are voting into a vacuum without the explanations from the staff already. They may not need it to make a budgetary decision, right? So.
Well, I'm going, by the end of the meeting, I'm going to ask what are the report that I request.
That's fine.
I will wait till at the end of the meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, so we're going to go back to 48 and I'm going to put it back up on the screen here. So again, this is just sort of a quick summary of where we were in the budget, the 2020 budget. There had been a contemplated $300,000 transfer of the 219 surplus and some actually reserved, because I think we only had 125 in 219. So there had been some $300,000 transfer from general reserve to operations that had been contemplated. Because of where we were with all the COVID funding and everything else, I actually did not go get that. So that remained in the reserve. We have a plan with, funding portion of the police transition through transfers from general reserve. Again, it's a little bit lower than we had budgeted because of how the police budget worked out this year. So overall, we only had this small amount that came out of reserve in 2020. It takes us down to that 2.786 million there. The surplus from 2020, you see the whole amount initially going in, and that's where we're looking at a tentative ending of the 4.3 million in general reserves. I'll take it to the next page and we'll talk about some of those dedicated reserves. And so this is those dedicated reserves that we have for a variety of different capital type things that are generally going on. Most of these, council will be familiar with. The additions is what was approved in reserve transfers in 2020 budget. The actual expenditure you'll see over in that second last column, and then that's where you sort of sit at the end of the ending balance on the reserves. There are a couple of the ones that we've discussed. I know we talked about them last year that are just sort of sitting there. Things like the public works infrastructure that comes out of planning. The Eau Chateau Reserve is one that we started a number of years ago to kind of help build us up towards at some point when we need to sort of fund the Chateau differently and have not had contributions over the last couple of years because of all the other budget pressures that have been on the, maybe it was just last year. I think it was last year we just took it out because of all the other budget pressures that we have on. Emergency measures is one that again has sat for a few years because we were building up towards various backup generators and things like that. And again, because of budget constraints, it has come off the budget for several years now. Evansville Playground, I think we talked about with this council as well, just a little reserve that's been carrying for quite a number of years from a group that had done some fundraising. And so overall, you see, we start with 2.275, we end with 2.766, and that's where we're starting going into the new year with where our reserves are. Nature's Trail Bridge still sitting there. Public Works Facility, they are planning on using that reserve in the current period. And so that's what we have with reserves. Should I pause before I go to financing, before I go to the debt?
I would say,
Can we ask question like we did and then we don't have to go back to it?
Yeah, I would suggest, well, it's your process, and I think it makes sense while it's fresh and you have it in front of you, that if there's anything she's presented or that you see that you want clarification on, that you should right now.
is it possible, just a second here, is it possible to minimize the screen? We all have the working document. Conseil.
Okay, you explained the Evansville, so it was a volunteer that was money provided or fundraising, so I'm okay with that. What about the parks, 34,229? Is that, and I think I know the answer, I'm not sure, but is that the money coming from sometime when there's development, there's a lot that goes into
Correct.
there? So my question is, this money, is it development that happened in the region of Sturgeon Falls? Like I would say Springer and Sturgeon, former Springer Township and that's.
Does anyone have the answer to that?
Ellen, do you have, it's not specific to just this area. It would have been all the development that has occurred over the last couple of years when they've had to give the parks reserve.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking. So is it mostly because the development that I know is all around it's Springer, and even it could include Cashby, portion of Cashby, because it's mostly development, housing development, right?
Subdivisions.
Subdivision, excuse me.
Yeah.
Subdivision. So,
Yes.
okay, well, it's mostly, that's what that's a question, you answer my question.
Okay, but I see
And the
that.
second one, or the last one, excuse me.
Lise, Conseil, I think Melanie wanted to say something.
Oh, I
No?
don't see it.
Oh, okay,
Okay, and the last one is 425 for downtown beautification. I'm thinking it's BIA, the former BIA.
I actually don't have any history on that one at all. It is reserve that has been carrying for well before my time. And I don't know the history on that
Jay will
one.
remember that.
I don't have it in front of me here, sorry. I'd have to, but yeah, that makes sense that it's a BIA that we don't.
Yeah, because I remember they were small, very small balance at some point of time, which this is very small, but I just want to ask those. Thank you very much. I got my answer.
Are there any other questions pertaining to the reserves? I had two. Did we, out of curiosity, when we look at general government facility, an expenditure of 200, was that the acquisition of the property of Weyerhaeuser that we purchased at the end, just before Christmas?
No, actually that's sitting, that stayed in the operating, that is the elevator. And the loan payment that happens out of capital.
Okay, so the acquisition for the purchase of Weyerhaeuser was out of the 2020 budget and not
Yes.
out of reserve. Okay,
Correct.
perfect.
Yep.
My other comment and maybe question, throughout the years, some dedicated reserves have been there forever. And is it possible to find out the ones that have been there for a very long time, i.e., I know there was Evansville Playground. At one time, there was a group doing fundraising. Well, I believe that was more than 10 years ago. I may be wrong, but I believe that reserve, there's been money sitting in reserves for ages. And I'd like to know the ones that have been sitting there for ages to see what will be the plan for those reserves. Because, and also, sorry, Jay?
No, that's a fair question. Yeah.
Okay. And the parks from planning, I'd appreciate also finding out exactly from which development did it occur, because there are requests that are being brought forward to council to invest in community projects. And if there's an opportunity to use that money, I'd like to know if there's an opportunity that we can use that money for community initiatives. So I think to me as well, I'd like to be able to get the answer to that question, if not today, at a later date.
So I think that if council agrees to those, and I think that's valid with respect to logical as to what's our plan for some of these things. I think that we can probably bring you those back on a subsequent meeting and just start the meeting with questions that we've had from a previous meeting. So Elisa and Melanie on some of those dedicated reserves, we'll just have a small report to bring back to them. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Any further questions? None? Okay, I'll pass it back to you, Alyssa. Oh, Conseil Dan?
Seems like everybody froze here.
Oh, okay. So I'll pass it back to you, Alyssa.
I'll flip to page 50 then.
The screen is frozen though. Is everybody's screen frozen?
No.
Okay.
Are we back on the debt one? Is that what we see now?
Yes.
I'm always afraid, in case I shared something weird. Not that I've got weird things on my screen, but you never know, right?
Be careful what you share.
I know, exactly, right? So the good news on the debt position is that we're paying down debt. The signage loan, which was in 2010, and it did the big welcome signs as part of a provincial project that happened at the time, was paid out this year, and that used to sit under the economic development budget. So you'll see less loan payment in economic development this year. The rest, like I said, and then the fleet was one that was split between fire and public works. You saw it in their capital, so it frees up a bit more capital. And so those both came off the books in 2020. And then the rest are just our loans that are going along. And I'm always really excited when I can see that water and sewer stuff finally starting to drop and make some big difference there. But that's where we're sitting with our overall debt position at the end of the year.
I'll say that I sound like a broken record. I know every year I bring it up. It's the debt with the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Museum. I would hope that once and for all, we can put that one specific item on a future agenda, and that we adopt a resolution and send a letter to the appropriate stakeholders to get this debt written off. This has been a carryover since amalgamation, and at the rate that it's decreasing, it reflects on our records, and also, it's part of our debt load, but really, it's a debt that the province is not requesting that we pay back in full, but they've minimized the disbursements that we need to do to them. And it should be off our books.
Yeah, and that, sorry, I've had some discussions with NHFC over the last couple of years, and they haven't been really open until this year, until the very end of 2020. They actually reached out to me to sort of indicate that they might be willing to entertain that now. So absolutely, Mayor Savage, that is one of those things I'm following through on to see if we can get that off our books.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any members of council?
Chris has a quick question.
Okay, can we minimize the screen?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do that here.
Thank you.
There you go.
Councillor Chris?
So my question, I guess I have two questions. Firstly, this debt here, I assume that the police station infrastructure Ontario, that's not reflected here, and that will flow through to this next year. We'll be looking at that on this sheet. Is
That's
that
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, secondly, there's I know when you when you put the numbers to the province, there's one page there that looks specifically at debt ratios, and our debt ratio in comparison to other municipalities is very favorable, as in we look like a solid bet that we're able to take on more debt. So what you're saying to me, by when you say, oh, we're paying down debt now, admittedly, the police station is going to add to it. But basically, if I'm understanding you correctly, generally speaking, we are in a good debt position. And if we did take on more debt for worthy things, you would not be too alarmed. Is that fair to say those things? Thank you.
That's correct. If you look at the payments column, when you add the municipal debt and the water and sewer debt, we're at kind of, 1.8 million of payments that we make. According to the province and their calculations and all the rest, we can make payments up to $6.5 million. So we do have a lot of room in here. All of that depends on interest rates and length of time and all that kind of stuff. So certainly as far as debt goes, we do have room to take on more debt, and we are in a comfortable position, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Alice, Conseiller Dan?
Okay, so on the same, well, he asked a question, but about the police building, which I had also, but it will come in effect in 2021 because the
Correct.
building, we already had some expense, but nothing is there yet.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so, but there will be a portion, and if we're allowed to another $6.5 million in payment, so that means we're in good financial, but I don't remember the date since we were not in good financial position. And Jay, if you remember, since day one, I think we always been in a good ratio when it comes to financial position for the municipality. So, which is great. But just refresh my memory, Alicia, and I asked you last year, and I should put it down, and I'm going to try to put it down. So Infrastructure Ontario Emergency, just give me a couple of examples, what it's all about. What is it?
Oh, so the Infrastructure Ontario Emergency, that was the renovations that were done at this facility in 2012. Chief, is that when we did it? When we did a fire police renovation in 2012, and that's what and it was financed through Infrastructure Ontario.
Okay, so, and the administration building will be the one you are in right now, right?
Correct. Yep.
And the roof, that would be the roof you are over your head right now?
No, that's actually the roof of the complex.
Ah, there you go. So, and on the other one, Ontario, what is it?
And so Infrastructure Ontario CS is a couple of years ago, we did a whole lot of work in community services to a bunch of different buildings, and we gathered it all up to finance it in order to get a lot done in a single year. And that's what that one is.
Okay, thank you very much, Alicia.
Conseiller Dan?
The ambulance building, we own that building.
Correct.
We put it together and they rent it off of us. So that's how it's being paid down, the rent?
Yeah.
Right. So there's on these on some of these debts revenues that are attached to them that are not on the tax base. So some of the borrowing that we did. So the ambulance, as an example, we have a lease. We have a capital recapture portion of our lease. Same thing with Santé Santé. So we've structured, in order to be innovative in partnering, we've structured a lot of that. So that total debt doesn't. Some of it has revenue attached to it. Just to answer in terms of trying to be, 1.8, but we want to make sure that we have the ability to repay it, and not necessarily depend on taxation and have taxation repay debt, because then it's, it might have been a good idea to do it at the time, but then in 6, 7 years, like the questions you're asking, it may not make a lot of sense. Saying, geez, we're paying a lot of debt. We're not seeing anything this year. So we're careful with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can I heard the two questions pertaining to the loan that were approved for the capital project for the new facility for policing, but we did have expenditures that did accumulate throughout the year 2020. So don't we have a current debt with them yet? Like, how are we paying the construction portion? I thought that was through the format of a loan where they advance the money, or that we grab the money that we need as the project is moving forward. So it's not clear in my mind how this is tabulated in this debt report.
So we actually have not had any construction draws from the financing point of view yet.
Okay.
on the, which is why you don't see it here. Once we start drawing from it, you will see it here, yes.
Okay, so that clarifies the issue. So since it's probably one of the largest projects that we're undertaking pertaining to the capital project dollars that are required to be invested, is there not a mechanism that we can have like an appendix attached to our workbook, identifying what's the cost of the project, the different phases, what we're capturing through operation, what we're going to be capturing through debt repayment? Is there a mechanism that we can have like a overview of all of this, and that it keeps on building, and as reporting to council, it can be provided to us bi-monthly or on a quarterly basis?
So certainly, when we look at the policing budget, you'll see it is captured, but if council wants sort of updates on construction, then we can certainly add updates on construction to council meetings. Yes.
Okay. And the reason I mention that is if we wouldn't be getting the disbursements on a monthly basis, we wouldn't be able to identify how much specifically is being dedicated to that capital project. And I think it's to avoid confusion, well, at least to make it clear to us. And I remember the project that we did for Minnehaha Bay, because, there were monies that came from a program, money that came from another program. But when you looked at the big picture, that's where we had a lot of pressure from the outside world asking us, why don't we have like a generic report just reflecting all of this and make it simple? And it would be simple for us. I'd appreciate it. Conseil Alice?
Well, I want to come back to that because there's nothing in that's because I remember at some point of time there were something in our monthly disbursement for almost to $1 million expense, and I asked the question what it was, and Alicia, you replied that it was from for the contractor for the building. So does it? What we saw, that means it's already been paid. Is it showing somewhere like in the, it must be, if you paid something, it's got to be somewhere in the budget.
No, because what the facility construction during the year, it's sitting in work in progress. We haven't got any of the loan advances attached to it yet, which is why you're not seeing any loan in this screen. And then on the budget side, what you see is the loan payments that occur connected to that facility as we get into loan payments. Certainly when the facility is constructed, or when we're finished all this transition, absolutely we'll do some final wrap up, presentations on that. Certainly we can do some updates in between on what's going on with construction, on time, on budget, that kind of thing. But you won't see this entire building sitting on the budget document.
It doesn't hit our, because it doesn't hit our budgets, because there's different, it's called fund accounting, and there's a separate special project. You didn't see Centre de Santé, nor did you see the ambulance as well. They're all set up in a separate financing arrangement that don't affect operations. What you see in our budget document is only what affects the taxation and the operation. So what the mayor is asking for is we'll provide a report the next general government meeting showing how it is, how it's financed and whatever, and where it exists in our accounting system, because this isn't where it exists.
Okay, but again, that doesn't answer my question, and maybe it's me, well, it's probably me. But I mean, because you're mentioning like the ambulance bay, that was clear that's what's the expense that owes the ambulance and also the centre de santé, and you explained that you're getting revenue, which we don't see in our budget. I can understand that it's something apart, but we're seeing that in our budget. What's the remaining? When we have paid almost, that I know, that I saw, that I noticed, it may be higher, but $1 million. So that $1 million, even if it was through our disbursements, it's not part of it. It's not like an expense for 2020.
Correct. Because
Correct.
it is,
So how do you pay for it if it's not an expense?
so again, it goes as Jay said, you know, we
So
don't,
you got it. Okay,
don't
got it. I
we
got
don't
it, Alicia. I got it. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. It's because when I pay bill in my account, they don't, they came out automatically, so that's. Okay.
So if we're okay with where we finished the year, then I'll take you back to the beginning of the book and we'll start to look at what 2021 is going to look like. So I'll have you flip back to, oh, let me find the page here. We'll go back to page 16. I'm just going to,
Mayor and council?
yeah.
Okay, wait a minute, gotta find my paper.
I get it on the right screen here. Yeah, to try to sort of make it easier without a whole lot of jumping around, I'm going to try to roll through the order that's in your workbook right now. So mayor and council is obviously you folks. Not a lot of change in the year over year. In 2021, you'll see this big jump in education, and that's because in 2020, again, when we were doing that COVID budget and we knew people weren't traveling, and we cut training budgets sort of across the board, including council. Now that the outside world has had a chance to sort of catch up, we are seeing a lot of these conferences and stuff are now being offered in a virtual format. They still do come with fees. So I've put the money back in there into the council education line. The wee change in office supplies for you is simply just an allocation, and that as we moved everything to cloud, including all of our emails to cloud, I break it out to the departments that it belongs to. And to that end, you know, some of the stuff that our IT department had done prior to COVID, like getting our email on cloud and getting some of our external software up on cloud, really made our ability to operate through COVID a lot smoother. Then professional fees, the addition in professional fees is just an assumption on integrity commissioner, and you know, the numbers over the year, you know, try to look at sort of a trend that we can have, and we're not sort of far enough in to look at trends, and so you know, I've thrown 25,000 as just a possible number. The little bit at the bottom, the 30,000 that was there in 2020 for capital expenditures was to look at some of that sound system and updates in the council chambers itself. There's an increase to it in this year's proposed, in that Kevin is now looking at, you know, if we look at the entire, not just the sound, but we look at how it's going to stream and how it's going to be connected, as well as that our projector is at end of life in the council chambers. And so that's what the 58 is. Again, it will be coming out of the facility reserve for this building, if council sort of approves doing all that upgrade to the equipment, in the assumption that at some point in the future that we might be back in council chambers, but that council might like the streaming method that we've got right now and continue to be able to stream directly from that location or a combination of that location and other locations. So that's the nutshell of council. Sorry, just one more thing. So each year, your increase as far as your payment goes up by the CPI of November. It was a fairly low CPI this year, so it was a 1.3 was the November CPI, which is what then translates to the salary increase for council.
Sorry, I was on mute. Councillor Elise.
Okay, just a couple of questions, Alicia. For the 21 budget, we have the amount of 155, 239 for salary and wage salary. And we had projected for 2020, 153, 247, and actual is 152, 67. We have what, August, September, October, November of salary for the word number 7. So it's not reflect, I guess, and we had a small increase. I think at that point of time it was $5 or $6 a month each counselor. So for there's just 1,100, like close to 200 difference variance, and we have 6 months less of salary, full salary for one counselor. So may I ask, how come if it's reflecting, then we would have been in a hole.
Yeah. So what I suspect, and I'll take a look at it, is that that a portion of the year of the car allowance is likely sitting in salaries as opposed to sitting in benefits where it should be. And so it would just be a flip-flop between them.
Okay. And the last one is just curious to see advertisement. What do advertise about council? I think there's enough now. So are we paying for some more?
So there's nothing in there. In the past, sometimes council has done, congratulations to the graduates or things like that, but it's not a line that's used frequently, no. Usually general government carries most of the advertising like that.
Okay, so you're not asking, well, you're still asking it, but it's not spent, but you're going to ask it anymore? You're asking it
right now. That's
So, and as far as the $25,000, I know that a big chunk of that was going toward conference for a counselor in the previous year. And we didn't have nothing for 2020. I don't anticipate. I know we have a couple, I think one in May, another one in June, and then August. I'm not too sure we're going to have big conference gathering this year across the province because of COVID. By the time everybody got their what do you call that? Vaccine, I guess, the vaccine. I don't think anybody will be able to go to big gatherings. So do we need to put, because even 5,000, a little bit at 5,000. I don't know. I'm just checking. I'm asking you if it's.
So what I will say is that a lot of these conferences have gone virtual. And so it's not that council will necessarily be traveling to all these conferences, because you're quite correct. I don't think we're going to see those large gatherings at all in 2021. But it's a matter of, even if you're attending online, that whether it's AMO or OGRA or whatever, that there is a fee for the virtual attendance. But absolutely, that's for council to take a look at.
So
yeah, yes, Jay.
The only comment, I don't disagree, but it's a philosophical discussion that you might want to consider, is that if you go kind of pay as you go, and you go with what you think you need right now in a COVID time, and you take away that line item, once you start gearing up back in business, you're gonna have to raise taxes to go get it. And so that's why when we talk about business continuity, we want to kind of make sure. I'm not suggesting that we want to go grab money when we absolutely don't need it, but whatever you don't use would go in reserve, which I'm going to assume is going to be spent to stabilize taxes if you didn't need it to begin with. But you could be creating yourself some problem going forward.
You're right, Jay. You're right. Thank you. So leave it. Well, it can be staying there, Alicia. I don't make decisions.
Okay, but I get the point that we need to budget, and provide a little bit of flexibility. But with the upcoming conferences scheduled for the remaining of this year, there's AMO, AFMO is not charging any fee for registration. And then there's FUNUM, and there's no traveling involved. So I think based on that $25,000 can probably be automatically chopped in half based on who attended virtual conferences last year.
Well, you can chop it completely. The point I'm making is that next year you're gonna have to add it.
Yeah, but next year, in our budget, well, you know
Okay.
what? If,
All right, I'm just making the point.
No,
Enjoy it
no,
next
but
year then.
I guess, peut-être que ce que je voulais expliquer, c'est que si on sait qu'on n'est pas pour dépenser le 25 000 au complet cette année, parce que les circonstances ne nous permettent pas de le dépenser, j'aime mieux réduire le budget pour nous donner la flexibilité pour la dépense, mais que ça soit réaliste aussi avec qu'est-ce qu'on peut dépenser. Parce que je fais juste énumérer que d'ici à la fin de l'année, en fait de conférences physiques, d'ici au mois de septembre, c'est garanti qu'il n'y en a pas. Puis les seules conférences qu'il y a d'ici au mois de septembre, c'est EMO, FUNUM, puis AFMO. Puis AFMO n'a pas chargé de frais pour l'an passé pour la conférence virtuelle. Donc, il y a possiblement 2 conférences, puis les 2
Oui.
conférences vont être virtuelles.
Moi, ça m'est égal. Ce que j'indique, c'est en termes de quand tu fais des budgets, tu regardes un budget de long terme ou tu regardes un budget annuel. Puis si tu regardes année en année, tu peux rentrer dans un problème sans avoir dans l'idée où tu vas être dans 2-3 ans. C'est tout. Alors, c'est votre choix.
OK. Bien, moi, je suis d'accord de voir ce montant-là. I'd agree that that amount be more reflective to the actual expenditure. Are there any other questions, Conseiller Denis?
Je trouve mon piton bon. I tend to agree with the mayor on this, that 25,000 seems excessive. Can we go back to 2018, 2019, see what the costs were? Because last year was not the same as a regular year, but just to see for that offer is like 25 is a big jump from 5. So I don't know, 218, 219 would at least show us if we're in the ballpark or not. So I would agree to bring that down if we can. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I did have a few questions pertaining to the actual budget. So I just want to go down to the $7,200 that we have earmarked for a community project. That's historically our senior Christmas supper, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and okay, so we'll see what 2021 is going to bring us, and would that provide us a little bit of flexibility? Let's say, for example, if 2021 we cannot host a senior Christmas supper because we cannot entertain large gatherings, that we could do another, that if council agreed, that council would be able to entertain another initiative for our seniors if we were not able to do our senior Christmas supper.
That's correct, Mayor Savage. That amount was always the senior supper, and absolutely not knowing what the rest of this year is going to look like. It might be that traditional senior supper is not the method that you're able to do this year, but the funds are there if there's something else council wishes to do.
Okay, perfect. Professional fees, is that line item strictly our integrity commissioner, or does it include any other expenditures?
Oh, sorry, I'm losing you there. So in let me just up here. In the budget line, the 25,000 is strictly budgeted for the integrity commissioner. In the current year line, let me just see what I've got here. Yep, in the current year line, the 40,000 is strictly the integrity commissioner as well.
Okay, and that's strictly for 2020. It doesn't reflect
Correct.
2019. Okay,
Correct.
perfect. And just a point of clarification pertaining to legal. 2020, we had no money put aside for that line item, but we did have an expenditure of $17,053. I was assuming that line item would have been higher here again, based on the disbursements, when we see legal fees that are being paid to either lawyers or law firms, and then it makes reflection, mayor and council. There were issues that council have dealt with. We retained the law firm. There were complaints that we had to deal with. So why does that amount not reflect the total expenditures?
Well, that's the risk of those disbursement sheets. Those disbursement sheets include HST and other things that we get credit for, where the expenses and what goes in as far as your budget is net of all of that. So when you get the disbursement sheet, you do have to take them with a grain of salt. It's not the same amount that's going to hit your budget lines.
Okay, but is it fair to say that the expenditure was much more than 17,053?
No, the expenditure was spent 17,053.
Okay.
What we paid out, because we paid tax on all that amount, would be more than that, correct?
Yeah, I understand the issue of taxes.
Yeah.
And I would have preferred to see the total amount that was dispersed for 2020, which council retained a legal firm, and those invoices, along with other activities, there were expenditures which exceeded far beyond 17,000. Should they not all be under mayor and budget? Mayor and council budget.
The 17,000 is the mayor and council legal expenditures net of HST. That's what there was. It's not somewhere else. That's what it is.
Okay, well, I had a list of other items. Maybe I'll send them to you separately because you know what, they're if they're incorporated into other departments, but they're expenditures that were incurred by council for whatever reason, I thought that they should be reflective in the mayor and council budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, send me the list and we'll take a look at what they are. Sure.
Okay, perfect. Conseil Lise.
Okay, I'm going back to professional fee, 40,000 something, which I did ask a question to Alicia about that, but I mean, that's for integrity commissioner for 2020.
Yeah, I can take a look to see if there's anything else that flowed into that for general or for mayor and council, but I can't think off the top of my head of anything else that would be in professional fees for mayor and council. That would just be the integrity commissioner.
The only thing I think that it might be for 2020, but there's a portion of 219 also, because that doesn't make sense, because we got some report right now. It's public. And I think that numbers for 2020 only is very high, and I don't think that's what it is, because we did saw some invoice, and 219 was 16,000 something. So I don't know, because it was paid after. I don't know, Alicia, but I find it very high and very low in the line of council, because there were some invoice that even with the tax, what we saw in the disbursement and whatever, that was higher than 17. And I can think about one that was. There were not $1,000 of taxes on it, and that was
certainly when there's invoices that are around the end of the year. So at the end of 2019, if I know the invoice is coming, or if I see it in early 2020, but it applies to 2019, then I apply it in the correct year. And so then, if there was something that went back, so you may have already seen it in 2019. And the opposite also happens as well. If there's stuff that's connected to 2019, but I don't know the invoice is coming, or we don't get invoiced until 3 months later, then actually it might be a 2019 expense that is going to hit 2020. So I try to play it up in January to see which year things are going in. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes the 2019 will slide into 2020 because the invoice comes really late.
Okay, so I guess it'll be when you see what the mayor have to send you, that probably maybe that's what did happen. There might be some fee that was entertained in 219. So because that's clear what it was saying for the integrity was 16,000. And I think after March of last year, there were a lot less complaint that there was in the first year of operation. So that's my thought. Okay, I don't have any more questions. So
can Can I just share my thought on one other line item pertaining to here? I know that we have for proposing, as far as budget, the reserve, to increase the reserve for council chambers. I just want to highlight that maybe the increase should not be this year that we plan the increase, because if we don't get back into council chambers in person for a very long time, it may not be the number one priority for this council as far as an expenditure for this year. I'm just saying that because we have money in the bank if that would occur, but then you know what? If we're not able to reconvene in person in council chambers for the bulk of the year, I personally don't find that we should be increasing that amount for reserve for modification to the sound system in council chambers. I'm just looking at mechanism to be able to save dollars.
Right.
And
So basically, you're deferring dollars. That's fine. I could proffer a reverse argument that while you're not there, it'd be good to do the work. But anyway, one of the things, two things I'd want to comment on. One of them is once we're finished this, maybe in our structure of 3-hour things at the halfway point, we consider a 5 or 10 minute resets. Just people are
What's
fresh.
coming, G?
So but the other thing I want to ask is that, and I really don't take any side over what council wants. I really, though, from a budgeting finance perspective, want to caution people about going pay as you go, because you're going to create yourself some problems going down the line. But the mayor asked for a reduction in conferences from, is it 25 to 12.5? Maybe, once we get those kind of direct things, if I can get council concurrence as to whether you agree or disagree, and then we'll record whether you want to go forward on that. So if there's one proposal right now, 25 to 12.5, if people have their hand up saying, yes, I agree to 12.5, then we'll record it. Just procedurally, Joanne, so we can grab it and make sure it's, it's not a debate or whatever.
okay,
Can I say something?
Councillor Chris?
So my thing is, like, these are all good points, but I would much rather finish the whole overview and try and get the big picture and have these things as a list, like so that we can tackle them all at once, as opposed to this, that, and the other.
Okay.
For example, there was to be a philosophical sort of conversation, and I have some things like, okay, so extra for parties, for example. So let's say that COVID and we get vaccinated and we can have a senior party. Well, we didn't have one last year, so maybe we spend a little extra. Maybe we spend a little extra on the parade.
Yeah.
And I have those kinds of things, but I want an overall picture.
So, but to be forceful, to be forceful though, Chris, now is the time, like the mayor indicated, she has two very concrete positions. No, let me finish. So that if we don't vote on it now, that's fine, but let's take a list and then after. So Madam Mayor, you're gonna, on our list of retaining discussion points about mayor and council, they'll be postponing capital for the council chambers and reducing training. I just want to make sure that if people have ideas or thoughts, that they share them right now. Maybe we don't vote on them right now, but that we want to hear them so that we capture them.
So
I sort of agree with Councillor Chris is saying, as we go along, if there's expenditures that some are highlighting that may not be required and that everyone contributes to it, that we maintain a list. And at the end, we're provided all that list.
Right.
So sorry, but I mean, instead of going to a vote on each one of them as we move along.
Fair enough.
Councillor Chris?
So along those lines, I would like a quick debate about community projects, because on the other end of things, people have been locked up forever. And if we're going to get out of lockdown, perhaps we might want to choose to spend a little more money. And that's something we could speak about at a later date too.
And that could be part of another department, i.e. community services as well. So that's why I say if we maintain a list, then we'll have a good idea at the end, and then we can have that constructive discussion.
As long as it's said now, and if people are holding their tongue now and have a thought, now's the time to share what they're thinking. So,
That's right.
right.
Okay, so if we on this topic in the same budget, then I guess because before COVID hit, when we used to enjoy our council chambers, it was discussed that the council chambers is an awful sterile place, and it was discussed maybe we could put some things like that. So perhaps some of that could go, like it says, capital expenditures equipment, and also the seating for the public is old horrible school chairs and stuff. So when we get back to normal life, that's something I would like to see. Personally, that's something I'd like to see better because it is a public space. Thank you.
Conseil Leo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What Jay was saying, if we remove or cut back from the 25 to the 12.5, and then next year we want to put it back, and then you have to hire to more taxes to bring it back. And if you keep it there, if we don't use it, it should go into reserve at the end of the year. But I think we should keep it there. If we're going to cut, maybe we can cut it later in the budget deliberations, but not right now. I say just leave it for the moment.
Well, that's
But I
what's
would not
being,
support it.
that is exactly what is being recommended, Conseil Leo. Like right now, we have not made that firm decision. We're going to put a list as we move on and we discuss all the departments. And if anyone has any issues that they want to bring forward as a concern, it'll be parked. And then once we have all that list, we can have that debate.
But we're not going to remove it right now.
No, and right now, it's just a list that's being maintained.
We're going to basically capture your thoughts, quantify it, and then present it to you after for debate.
Conseil Yvon,
Break time, Madame Mayor. Please,
pardon?
can we have break time, please?
Oh, okay, yeah, and
Move it.
okay, can I just make a recommendation? Do you want to stick to the 10 minutes or do you want to go to
15 minutes.
15 minutes at least?
Yeah, number is,
Christie, everyone agrees, 15 minutes? Okay, and our best way is just to stay on and just mute and reconvene in 15 minutes. Okay. Oh, sorry. Do we need to adopt a resolution to, so Councillor Chris moves and Conseil Leo second.
It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Millet that a meeting at break be held at 2:40 p.m. To reconvene in 15 minutes.
All in agreement? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have majority, there's 5. That's it, yes. Okay, I guess if I look at my watch, it's been slightly more than 15 minutes. Denis, Leo, Lise, Dan.
Allô, mais la bouffe, t'as pas mangé.
So we're all here for the exception of Councillor Dan right now.
Guess we'll start.
Yes, we will. And I'll leave it to you, Jay, and to Alyssa to walk us through the next portion of the document.
Sure. So we're at corporate services or general government or whatever we want to talk about. So Elisa, I'll give you the floor. Knock 'em dead.
So if we're good, we're going to go back to share screen. And like I said, I'm going to keep trying to talk and flip the screen at the same time. So we'll see how we go here. So corporate services encompasses, just kind of as a refresher, encompasses general government, the folks you see in this building here, our IT, our communications, and bylaw. There is a separate tab for bylaw that we will talk about, but that tab is actually incorporated as part of the overall that you see here. So I will just then touch on what Councilor Fisher asked about, just to talk about the current year and impacts. So yes, 2020 was supposed to be the last year of the phased in rollout for people's assessments. And so everyone in 2020 was supposed to get, hey, by the way, this is what your new assessment's going to be. And here's the new 4-year cycle. And we would have started to see those changes in 2021. But with COVID, they just put a stop on that. And so everyone's assessment for 2020, they're holding it for that extra year. So 2021 is still based on the 2016 assessment for residents and commercial. So that certainly does change. It doesn't impact, as Jay explained, this budget document here, but it certainly does change things for as far as what tax rates are going to look like, what it means for our residents and our commercial taxpayers. And I don't have a startup date for when MPAC's going to get back at it. They were, like I said, starting back out to do some of those reassessments in October. They are back in the same spot where they're not doing anything again now. And so we are just sort of on a wait, so that at some point we will get this new assessment cycle through, and what that will mean to us. It will be interesting, actually, because real estate is becoming a little bit hot in the residential stuff. It'll be interesting to see whether that flows through and what that looks like for us in the next assessment cycle. But the assessment cycle is not happening in this year. So the changes you see there, licenses and fees. We pulled it back a little bit last year because we knew COVID was going to shut down all those lotteries that tend to go. Pulled it back even more this year because of what happened last year and the fact that the bingo is no longer in Sturgeon Falls here. So that will change things as far as licensing and fees. Some of that, it also includes marriage licenses, small things like burial certificates and things like that. But a lot of that is our lottery licensing, or has historically been our lottery licensing. And again, just sort of when you're looking at revenue, we always start off without that transfer from general reserve in the picture. So that's why that 300,000 is not sitting in the 2021 budget line. We always start off that way. And then we see where things go. Dividend income is from power gen, and it doesn't change. That stayed the same. Salaries and wages, the change. So everyone is sort of that collective agreement increase that comes through. Last year, we asked for sort of an additional corporate services position, sort of a financial analyst type position to sort of support budgets, to support our managers, to support analysis and projects throughout the year. It was not approved last year. I put it back in as a request this year. What has stayed in the budget is that sort of special project position that is funded from the municipal efficiency fund. So that position has stayed in the budget. There is revenue connected to that position still from the grant, and it has stayed in. That's sort of the change of salaries. Changes of benefits is, CPP changes every year. The max is changed on everything every year. Our health benefits, as far as cost of benefits, a slight increase because we use a 5-year rolling average to get the benefits increase for our health benefits. That applies to all the departments.
Madam Mayor?
You know what, Conseil Leo, since we're dealing with corporate services, general government, I'm going to let the chair of that department chair this portion.
Madam Chair?
Conseil, yes, Conseil Leo?
I think it's just a clerical error. On a POA, you said actual 25,000 and budget 30 and variance is 55,000. I think it should be 5,000, right?
No, that actually is correct. So there's two things that happen there. So POA is our provincial offenses, and we usually get this fund as a share of the funds from the North Bay. So, and it's one of those ones that we don't get at the end of the year. So at the end of 2019, I accrued an amount saying, I think we'll get all of our POA, because historically we got all of our POA. And then we didn't.
So it's to the good.
Yeah. No, it's too bad. So then I had to reverse what I had accrued in 2019 because we simply did not receive that. And we are actually anticipating that we're going to be asked to share in the cost of their losses in 2020. So it's a combination of things there that are impacting the POA. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. And may I ask Councillor Leo that we got to do the same thing we did the first portion. We'll let Alicia go through the document, which is page
Okay.
1 and 2, and then after that, I'm going to go around with the question, Councillor Leo. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, so the spiel I just gave you on the salaries and wages and then benefits is going to impact all the departments. So, CPP and EI, WSIB, simply because those maxes go up. So we're seeing increases in that. The health benefits is always sort of this 5-year rolling number that we use in order to estimate what our health benefits are. Everyone across the board saw a little bit lower health benefits this year. And the assumption is that actually because people couldn't get prescriptions and they couldn't get in to do physio, and they couldn't get in to do those types of things. So that's where the numbers are coming from. And that will be the same across the board for all the departments. The only big change in salaries and wages, like I said, is that ask for an additional person in corporate services. When we look through sort of the operating costs, IT and support, general government is we always separate the chargebacks. General government is the main chargeback on Kevin and the IT department. It also includes just additional support, and then the software costs that increase year to year. So there's a little bit in there. The benefit of some of the work that Kevin has been doing over the last several years and some of those software costs is that decrease in leasing costs that you see. That 20,000 is actually a decrease in leasing costs, and that's because he's been able to consolidate our operations, move things out to cloud, and our servers are renewing this year on lease. We just lease the technology so that we have immediate response time, and we do change our servers over every 3 years. So we're actually seeing a substantial decrease in our server lease expense for our main servers here at Town Hall. And that's, again, thanks to all the work that Kevin has been doing over the years with our IT. I'm going to flip you now to page 20. Special projects, you'll see this 86,005. There's actually revenue up in the grant line in 2020 or 2021, to offset that 86.5, and that's our operational review. That was funded out of the first intake of the Municipal Modernization Fund. So we were approved for funding on that. We had a RFP. As Jay mentioned at the beginning of it, we are reaching the end stages in that. So we'll see it come just in and out, revenue and expense this year. Because it's got the associated revenue, it doesn't impact the tax. Utilities and telecommunication, again, general government was part of that group that saw some savings in hydro in the 2020 year. Because of the time of use, and we're going back to this to full time of use, we've got our folks back upstairs again. It was a little bit hard. I am anticipating that compared to where we were budgeted in 2020, that we'll have a little less hydro costs than we did, just based on historical and where we might be when we go back to sort of full billing and full use of this facility. The additional 31,000 in write-offs has something to do with that MPAC assessment and what's going on. This year, again, because MPAC was not out doing a lot of work, we didn't get the supplementals. We also may not have got all the write-offs that people were expecting, and that is going to catch up with us. But a lot of this is commercial, and we've seen some substantial commercial write-offs over the last 5 years. And again, with sort of the uncertainty of how commercial is going to be evaluated in the new cycle, I've increased what I anticipated write-off, because going back to what we were prior to 2020, I expect that we may see some additional write-offs in commercial there. Everything else is sort of small amounts there. I'm going to bring you down to the transfer to reserve line. So transfer to reserve, we're asking for an additional 25,000 to go to facility reserve. So facility reserve has been 140,000, with another 45,000 that's gone to equipment, which is equipment and IT and all that. So we're asking for another 25,000, and the expenditures for this facility and how that reserve is spent, Steph will actually present when you see the facility capital and that type of work. We're just acknowledging that this building and general government is housed in this building, and that it's responsible for a portion of the work that gets done. But certainly there's a lot of work that we need to be doing in this building, and we certainly need to be looking at how we are funding for the future on this building. So that's why there's a request for the additional 25,000. So as far as actually what goes on in capital expenditures, as Jay pointed out, general government is not a heavy capital expenditures one. So in 2021, what's sitting in that 170 of capital expenditures is actually the loan payment. That's the continuous loan payment that we were doing on this facility. So that's part of what's in there. It's the police fire renovation, not the mental, but it's the police fire renovation, that one Ontario infrastructure emerged that we saw on the debt. And then there's just shy of $57,000 of IT expenditures coming out of reserve. So part of that, $30,000 of that is work that was actually budgeted in 2020 for our whole backup setup and the whole backup system. It did not get done in 2020, so it's carrying over in that 56. And the rest of the 56 is made up of routine, just replacements of computers for a portion of our folks, as well as Kevin has got some work now that we've got our servers being downsized and fire is going through the same thing, and we've got police moved out of there. Kevin's also going to take advantage of this opportunity to do some clean up and fix up in our server rooms. Is about $8,000 connected to cleaning up our server rooms. So with our routine replacements, that big 30,000 carrying over, and sort of this $8,000 on fixing up the server rooms, that comes up to sort of 56 of that capital assets. The rest is simply the loan payment that we make on the police fire renovation that sits in capital. All the rest of the work that you see done at this building, as I said, you'll see under Steps and Community Services. It's funded by us, but it's part of the facilities that Steph will present to you. Did you want to take a pause before we go to bylaw?
To what? I think we should ask question about that to Lisa just to finish one portion.
Yep.
Okay, so can you put the screen so I can see a question? I'm going to start with Yvonne. Do you have any question, Yvonne? You're a speaker, Yvonne.
The only thing hello, Alyssa, the only thing I'd like to know is what what it would cost you to have a financial analysis to assist in wages. Just a general.
Yeah, so I put them kind of as a mid-year hire, and so we always calculate benefits and everything else along with it, and I put it in as about 65,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you,
Okay,
Lee.
so now I think it's conseiller. I'm gonna go in order, Councillor Fisher, so you can wave at me, but I'm gonna go, you'll have your turn, okay? I think I don't want to get lost, so Conseiller Yvon, after that, I think it's
It's me.
Conseiller, who?
Me.
Let it be, Fisher. Yes, F, go.
Okay, so I got a couple questions. Just for a recap and a refresher, the dividend income, that's from PowerGen, correct? And that went down because we did or that will go up again once we're through the major renovation we did. Can you just refresh me on the timeline of that? And then I guess let me ask the other question too, because it's fairly simple. I see in community services, the general insurance stayed flat, yet I see in all the other departments a bit of a spike in insurance. And I know we discussed insurance and the way it's getting a bit out of control and the support for other municipalities there insured to level out insurance. So why is there a spike in, not a spike in community services in general insurance, and why do we have the line item in community services that is the it's insurance settlements? Why do I see that one there and not somewhere else? So I guess that's three things. Thank you.
So thank you for the middle one there, Councillor Fisher. As Jay said at the beginning, Councillor Senecal, when she sent me back her notes on looking at corporate services, picked that up as well. So there is actually a $22,000 adjustment that the general government increase in reserve or increase in insurance didn't come through. So that's how we started. We're not actually starting at the 6.7. It's 6.8, sort of the starting point. So there is $22,000 that has to go in for the increase in general government insurance. The insurance settlement, we typically hold it all in general government. So whether it's a slip and fall at a facility, or whether it's you know, a lot of them are slip and falls, or whether it's something else, we always run them through general government, with some very rare exceptions where we put things into departments because it's very specific, or we've paid out a very specific amount. Otherwise, general government just sort of assumes those amounts. And I'm forgetting your first question already, Councillor Fisher.
So the dividends,
The dividends, yes.
the dividends with PowerGen didn't go down because of the construction. It's just that they're not necessary. It went down because we started a split because of our infrastructure pressure for sewer and water. So we split that so that we can smooth out some of the stuff. But they will go up substantially once once the power generation facility has stabilized. And so you are partially correct as to why we wouldn't want to increase them right now. We still have to modernize that plant a little bit more and pay for what we had, which is about a 7-year. Not to say that we wouldn't increase them before that. It's just that once you see a massive spike in profit, we'll be in about 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Are you okay, Councillor Fisher?
Thank you, I'm done. Thank you.
Conseiller Larrabee?
Yes, I would have a question here on insurance settlement. Are you saying that we are settling instead of going through the insurance, we are paying for it?
No.
Okay.
So the insurance settlement line is generally sort of the cost that we incur up to our point of deductible on an incident. And so it's a combination of either the lawyers defending us, the adjuster going in and looking at things. Sometimes it's really fast. The adjuster just sends a letter back and it's done. No, so no, it goes through the insurance, but the settlement is just a reflection of our costs up to the deductible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Conseiller Revita?
It's not Councillor Mallette first.
Yes, the Councillor Mallette first, you're right.
That's okay.
See, I didn't want to forget you, Dan, because you're usually the one I forgot. So Conseiller Mallette, sorry.
No, thank you, Madam
Sorry.
Chair. I had one and it was responded. Thank you.
Okay, that's why I jumped it, okay, because he had asked this question. Jose Revido, your turn.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, on another board that I sit on, we had a real spike in our WCIB. Do you anticipate that that's going to affect us in another year or so?
Yeah. So our WSIB, so they've changed how WSIB is being calculated, and they're getting rid of sort of their old system and moving everyone to this new system. And they defer the implementation of it for us, and that they're holding our WSIB right now as the same as it was in 2020. But they're taking, they take our history of the last 6 years to determine what the rate is going to be. And there's two things. There's our own personal history that rolls into it, and then there's also the industry history. So our rate right now is 3.16. The industry rate right now is actually 3.4. So we can expect to go at least there. When they look at our 6-year history, it's actually more like 4.2. So yeah, we could have a significant increase coming. Now, every year we get past the OPP transition, because a lot of our claims were actually policing claims, and as they start to fall off, then our number is going to get better again. So yeah, if they roll it in next year, they are going to roll it in, but they're going to restrict how bad a hit it is each year. But right now we're headed towards a significant number in WSIB. And some of that, like I said, is shaped by the industry as well. And municipalities, because emergency services, whether it's and presumptive diagnoses that go along with emergency services, municipalities are going to frequently have a higher standard than other businesses. It's going to become an issue, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Okay, now I think I'm up to Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make the distinction between, when it comes to impact, between the supplemental and grabbing the new assessment. There's a difference between both. Would that be correct, Alyssa? Because new assessment would be, we have new construction, they get the occupancy permit, and then automatically we grab those revenues.
Correct.
But the supplemental has to do with the new project or initiative that Impact was doing and spreading over a few years.
So if there's been somebody who, like I said, who built a house and the house is now built and we are going to get it assessed in this year, then that is a supplemental, and that's what we're seeing. The assessment is that other stuff that we wouldn't reflect it in the budget document if we had if we had got the new assessment done for 2021. What we would see it is when we start talking tax rates and tax ratios, we'd see it at that point. But yeah, that assessment growth is different from, like you said, new builds and those type of stuff for growth. Yes.
Okay. But Impact is providing us in a timely fashion when it comes to construction growth.
So again, they got hung up in 2020, as we did, in that they were not able to go out and do physical inspections, and they usually do physical inspections even on construction growth. And so by the end of the year, they had a system set up to do an initial grab based on electronic data that was sent until they can get out to do the physical inspections. But we are going to end up where we are going to be chasing again for a couple of years till we get that caught up. Yes.
Okay. And there is an expenditure line where we have for property assessment. Is that our contribution that we pay to Impact for the service that they provide to us?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The POE issue. That amount may not be extravagant, but then it's going to create hardship if they anticipate for us to pay to contribute towards the losses. So will that issue come back to council for further discussion or for more details pertaining to exactly the situation that we're going to be in and the predicament that they're going to be expecting from West Nipissing?
So I'll just let you know that in 2020, I did apply the COVID funding against some of this lost revenue from POA. But I will let Jay speak because he sits on that as our representative for that group.
So the governance of POA, POA was Provincial Offences Act, or Part 1 and 2 fines, was downloaded to the province of Ontario in the late 90s. And the agreement that happened for Nipissing District is there are 5 voting communities. And the CAOs basically run the budget for that. And so back in the day, we used to get about $130,000 to $140,000 a year. So what happens is it's like a special company. All of the lawyers, this, that, the tickets, the processing, this and that, and then the cost of goods sold is X, and then the profit is divided on a percentage basis to the municipalities. That has been declining. And I've been there fighting with my colleagues to ensure that the city of North Bay, is assigning expenses accordingly. And I'm not suggesting that they weren't or whatever, but that the cost of goods sold is reasonable. And it's been steadily declining. And so now we're at a point where, to answer your question, Madam Mayor, and it will come back to council, is that the last time when we received this information, I raised the point, and I had a couple from other municipalities, is that, hey, we got into this business because it was a net contributor. If it's not even that now, and if it's a net loss, maybe we want to send a notice to the government that we're out of that business and we're just going to give it back to them. And so we're looking at having a more detailed report and a more detailed conversation with that. And once that happens, should happen within the next month or two, I will be bringing the issue back to council at that point.
Okay, perfect. Just to clarify as well, dividend income, when we made reference that it was a split, customarily, historically, the amount that we grab from dividends from the power gen is pretty well relevant to what's indicated on the worksheet, $350,000. So that is the total amount of the dividend from West Nipissing Power Gen?
No, the total dividend is actually 420. There's 70,000 that still sits with water and sewer.
Okay, so when did we start grabbing 420? I never thought that we exceeded beyond the 350 or beyond the 300.
I'll have to go back and look historically.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least 5 years ago, and it was actually 420 for quite a while. What happened is we actually, when we had a good year or whatever, we basically split it and sent some to sewer and water. But we've been at 420 for quite some time now.
Okay, so there's another portion which is applied to water and sewer. Okay. I don't recall that, but I have I'll check it out, because I remember years we gave it to water and sewer to alleviate the increase to the users, and then we rolled it back to decrease the tax requirement.
We haven't been that fluid. We made a change once. I think it was about 125. It was a higher split, and then I believe in the last year or two, we softened that and took more on our side back because sewer and water didn't need as much. But that
Okay,
was in the last 2 years.
so for this year, is this the only graph that we're doing is this the total amount of the dividend that's going towards the taxes? Is there any other amount going to other budgets?
It's the total amount going to.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And then the HR, well, okay, I got the answer for that. That's the project that we're doing to do the analysis, about operations and so on and so on. Do we have a timeline when we can expect that project to be completed?
The report should come back to council hopefully in April.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I had that I put down, legal expense. I know that we have a legal firm that works, that's retained by the municipality. Can we have a breakdown of exactly in ratio to what this applies? Because, you know, I'm assuming that there's a bulk of it, which is daily operational issues, you know, to guide decision-making process and advice for council. But anything else, is there an opportunity to get a breakdown of the legal expenses? Last year, they were overexpended by, I think, a larger amount, and this year again for 2020.
Sure. So the breakdown is operational, but in two ways. One is municipal law type of the land planning contractual issues, and that would be your bills that you see on your disbursements from Russell Christie. And
Okay.
then Hicks Morley is an HR firm, and they deal and they assist us with HR legal advice, but they also assist us with arbitration and labor relations and so forth.
Okay, and I did see under planning that we have a legal line as well. So I was making the assumption that legal under planning was for the building and planning department. Not a big amount, but there was a line there.
There's a little bit with planning, yes.
Okay, okay. And the special project, that's the one that that was the position that was approved. Well, I shouldn't refer to a position because I don't want to be, it was the contractual position, well, contractual individual to be able to help out with the special project, but that we had funding to cover that.
If you're looking at the line under operating costs, it says special projects. That's actually not the position. That is the operational review, but there is funding to cover that.
Okay.
That
okay.
contract position is part of the HR costs.
Okay. Thank you. And I do concur, like, you know, I reviewed the entire document, and I know that I'd like to be able to see just maybe a footnote or an appendix, all the grants that we got. And if there's any monies that are not expended, what's our deadline to be able to spend those monies? And even like maybe a COVID, it's hard to follow. You know what? I know that we received nearly $1 million and we're allocating certain part of that money to various departments. But if we can have at least an appendix, you know, where it's an easy flow to be able to say exactly, we got this, this is how it was spent, this is how much we have left. Right now, there's so many grants that we did get, and if we can get a tabulation of that, that would really facilitate, you know, in being able to even moving forward and relate to the other departments. I'd appreciate that.
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. Conseiller Denis.
Good, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to go back to dividends or dividend income. And I brought this up last year, and I know there's a $70,000 levy, special levy that they have put in a couple of years ago, but isn't it time to take that 70,000 out of there and put it back where it belongs with the general government? Sort of penalizing people who don't have water. Why should I be paying water and sewers? So that 70,000 was put there to help out in hard times, but I think it should go back to where it belongs. I don't see it in water and sewer. That's my question.
So that would be a council decision based on what you feel where it should be best put. Fine. I would just make this point with respect to sewer and water and who gets it and who doesn't. The fund, when it was contemplated, when we got grants from the government, was contemplated to assist the municipality at being competitive and so on and so forth. So, you know, though it isn't a direct receipt for somebody like me or you who are not on sewer and water, the benefit to the health of the community is where it's considered, but it's still a council decision. And so when we see the sewer and water budget, if you feel that they don't need that dependency, then certainly the decision can be made at that time.
Okay, that's all I have today.
But just a point of clarification, is the dividend from PowerGen this year 420 or is it 350?
420 is what is the assumptive, is what is contemplated
For this year?
for this
Okay.
year. It's been 420 for the past several years.
It has?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I'm going through really fast because, oh, sorry, Councilor Fisher, well, I went around, so can okay, go for it, but you had your turn, I think.
Yes, I did. I just want to follow up on what Dennis just said, because I think from a philosophical point of view, he is right. And I just want to make sure that we can capture that at the end when we're making decisions, because I do think that bears a discussion, whether that actually does belong in stormwater anymore. Thank you.
Okay, so I can't comment on that right now, because if we start going like that, because I think it's beneficial for all the community, we're gonna see how much gravel we put somewhere and say that's not beneficial for me, so it shouldn't be put there. So, but we'll discuss that that one later on water and sewer, I guess. I want to thank you, Alicia, to have taken the time to promptly respond to the question that I have. And I don't have any more question, except I would like to summarize in case because those were the question. And Elisa did identify that because I asked question about grant, and she did give me the information for the portion of the grant that they receive for corporate service, which is the OMPF, which you have the amount. And then she went for the cannabis bylaw, which we're going to be losing this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we were losing it, Alicia.
We are, yes. So it was out in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this year, the grant, there's still 27,344. We're gonna be losing. Okay, I got it. This is okay. And I'm going back to the special project, because you said that was for the review, the line special project 86,500. So that's a grant, and it's there. Is there a portion allocated for under the HR expense? And I'm a little bit mixed up, because if it's grant, it's there, but it seems that it's done as an increase that you're requesting.
Yeah.
That.
So flip back up to page 18.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah. So on page 18, when you're looking at the revenues, there is a line for grant. And so in 2021, there's $151,000 sitting in the grant revenue line.
Okay.
And that is recognizing the 86.5 to cover the special projects, which is the operating review. And it's also, I think, 65,000 to cover that contract position to work with us on all the other special projects that are going on as well. So you see it in the grant revenue line, and then you see built into the HR is that contract position, and then the operational review is on its line by itself under special projects. And so it's sort of in those three places. You know, if we don't incur the expenses, so that contract position doesn't get hired till June, then the costs are less and the revenue is less as well. And those two will continue to offset each other in actuals as we roll through the year.
Okay. I cannot say I quite understand it. If I don't, I will get back at you, okay, Alicia, later on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's I guess, and then what I asked Alicia also is to define a legal fee and a professional fee, which she did. Legal fee was strictly for lawyers, and then a professional, which auditor and other things. So thank you. Yvonne, okay, Yvonne.
Hey, you're gonna have to excuse myself for a minute. I have to go pick up my wife. She's not able to see, and she's at Leclies, so I'll only be 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so again, I guess the other part of the corporate is the bylaw. How do you call it that bylaw something? bylaw, right, Alicia? Any
Yeah.
other question regarding that portion? So that's going to be brought up, and that will be, that's one down the line, and a few more to go.
Yeah, so if we're okay, I'll just take you through bylaw. Bylaw is part of the corporate services budget, but we've broken it out so you can see it both as a request, because we had the request last year, so you could sort of see what was going on with the department, and also because there are some decision points that need to happen at some point on bylaw. So as you know, we just mentioned that the grant revenue that was attached in the 2020 budget was sort of a 2-year phase-in of some cannabis funds that were to help municipalities in bylaw enforcement and education and things like that with the changes of the cannabis laws. So both of our bylaw enforcement officers have been out and doing that in addition to their regular bylaw duties. So you'll see in 2021, that's the big change is that amount has come out. Now for budget presentations, I've left everything else the same. I've assumed that we've continued to have 2 part-time bylaw officers and what it would cost us to have those 2 part-time bylaw officers. And then just some small changes on vehicles so that, you know, they have vehicle now a little bit more into upkeep as the vehicle ages. Eventually, we may need to talk about new vehicle for this department, but not at this year. So I'll give you just a little bit of, it's not a full activity report, but just a little bit of what bylaw does and what bylaw has done, particularly in 2020. So through 2020, our bylaw, they supported the COVID effort a lot, both by being actually in place at the assessment center for a number of months until we got that staffed differently, and doing a lot of sort of these COVID patrols, both at the beginning of the COVID season and again now, where they were doing just sort of patrols through the community, keeping an eye out on large gatherings, making sure that people weren't on our playgrounds in the summer when our playgrounds were closed. Our ice rinks for their ice rinks were shut down in 2021. And so they've been doing a lot of that just out in the community patrol. And we don't necessarily see the revenue connected to that. The bylaw revenue that's there is from ticket writing. And again, due to the COVID shutdown in 2020, we actually had a double whammy. Both we sort of stopped issuing as many tickets initially, both as a let's let the public kind of get control of things, and the fact that we didn't have any parking downtown and all these places were closed, and so we weren't worrying about handicap parking and things like that. So we certainly see less revenue in 2020 just due to the fact, again, that the COVID activities are going on. So in addition to the COVID stuff, during a regular year, our bylaw enforcement officers do parking patrols, but they do a lot of the property standards as well, and the snow pushing across the road. And we do some of that on a complaints basis. So, somebody calls and says, my neighbor's dog is barking, or, there's a lot of garbage built up at this apartment unit, and they're out doing that kind of things. They are also doing stuff not complaints based when they're out doing the patrol. So if they see somebody watering on the wrong day or pushing snow across the road, those types of things, they tend to focus on education rather than charging with the community. Again, through COVID, they supported us a lot, just being an extra body out at our landfill sites and just sort of assisting in sort of traffic control, even out at our landfill sites. So they do wear a lot of hats in the work that they do. But as we know, we have lost the funding for this year, so there is sort of room for discussion at some point on what level of service council would like to see on bylaw. Do we value them being out in the community? Do we want to go to just strictly complaints based? And where does council see bylaw enforcement as we roll through this transition back to being funded by the taxpayer?
Okay, so I'm going to go around. Councillor Duhaime is gone, so Conseiller Mallette, question, comment? Your mic is...
Councillor Fisher first, I think.
Okay, well, Councillor Duhaime and Councillor Fisher, yeah.
Okay, so I
I'm
just
not
got,
gonna get it.
I have one quick question. So assuming, I think the bylaw department, I think it's a great and important department. Like, let's assume that we all agreed that, that we're always gonna have bylaw enforcement. And you did mention the vehicle. In a perfect world, I guess this question's for Elisa, would we not always be putting a small amount into reserve, sort of in dedicated reserve for that vehicle? So there's never like, there's a new vehicle is what, $30,000-$40,000 for the type of vehicle they need. So assuming that bylaw enforcement is a long-term thing, wouldn't we want a dedicated reserve for that vehicle?
In a perfect world, Councilor Fisher, that would be a wise idea. We look at our light vehicle turnover at 3 to 5 years, depending on the mileage of our light vehicles. And then we would be actually exactly what you said, sort of putting away a portion each year. Because our municipality is so large, our bylaw department does put a lot of miles on. They do a lot of travel.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to Councilor Malette, I guess.
Councilor Larrabee, Madam Chair.
Oh, for God's sake, Councilor Larrabee. That's what I'm saying, numbers, I mean, it's long meeting when it passed 2 hours. So Councilor Larrabee. And
Thank
maybe
you.
the next one, raise your hand, Councilor Dance, I won't forget you. Or Councilor Malette.
All right. No, I'm a strong supporter of bylaw officers. They're doing a great job. I remember a time when we did not have bylaw officers and was kind of hard to keep things straight. But now with the bylaw officers, things are we're going in the right direction. This is a comment. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Councilor
now-
Malette.
Yes, well, I also agree. We need to keep the bylaw because we keep creating bylaws. And if we have nobody to enforce them, then why create bylaws? So yeah, let's keep it in the budget.
I think we got to vote on that when it's time, but that's your comment, right? Okay, Conseiller Revida.
Oh, I have no comment. It's clear. Thank you.
Okay. Madame la Mairesse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No doubt, bylaw enforcement is required, but I definitely, would hope that before we end the budget, that we have the opportunity to have a strategic discussion. I was looking to find out at exactly the number of enforcement that have been done throughout the year. There's expectation out there in the public. What I've been hearing throughout the year is the footbeat. Having the physical presence of a bylaw enforcement officer when it comes to littering, when it comes to the dog poop, and throughout the community. So if I'd have an indicator, benchmarks on telling me exactly where the enforcement was done in 2020, that would give me an indicator. Do I want to sustain that same type of enforcement? Do I want to enhance it, to expand on the service? I think just a generic report would be great. That would provide me with a template to be able to make a constructive decision. And depending where we go, when I look at the vehicle expenditures, last year and this year, like that's $20,000 for maintenance of the vehicle. So I'm making the assumption that probably that vehicle is probably beyond its lifespan and requires a lot of upkeeping and repairs. And if council continues with the direction of providing the vehicle, maybe we can look at something that would be more conducive for this year and for the future years, instead of spending that amount of money, just for the maintenance and repairs and the upkeeping of the vehicle. That would be my comment. And I'm aware that bylaw enforcement has supported the assessment center. But here I would make the assumption that a portion of those wages would probably be related to COVID. So here again, when I'm talking about the COVID funding, the COVID expenditures, it'd be great just to have some footnotes, a one-pager just to explain it. So this way, if anyone has any questions, it's clear, of how we needed that funding and how it's been used and allocated last year and this year. So
Well, sorry, I will just let you know that when bylaw, or when it was our community services folks, or when it was our finance people, when they were working at the assessment center, their wages were actually coded to the COVID budget. So they're taken out of the department and they're actually coded to the COVID budget, which is probably the next page you've got there. So they weren't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I sort of try to follow the flow and relate it from one department to another department, but I'm looking at simplifying the process. And if I have that information at my fingertips, it makes it much easier to make those decisions and to move on very quickly instead of coming back and forth, because otherwise I'm always going to be asking the same questions. And if I ask, anyway, I've stated my, what I think is important for me to be able to move forward.
Thank you, Madame la Mairesse. Conseiller Sénécal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no comments at this point.
Okay, now finish with my comment, and I agree that in principle that we definitely need those two. I mean, I'm looking at on paper, and I mean, first of all, like we have vehicle expense, and before we did not have a car, we only had one. Now we have two, and we have a vehicle. COVID. So if we in 2020, if our officer was spending, because it part-time is about 20 to 24 hours a week, is that what they working both?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so if they were going at the center, why is there's only the variance is it's less than 300. So that's the only thing you took from the COVID 306, because it's the same amount that for the 27, that's the salary, part of the salary.
No, so the time when the bylaw officers were working at the COVID center, that you don't see those wages in the bylaw budget. When they were doing COVID patrols, that is part of just their regular duties. But when we had the officers working at the assessment center, that's not part of this budget. You'll see it on the next budget.
I know, but again, I'm gonna have to see, like Madame, because that would make a difference at the end. I think I would like to see again, I'm reinstating, because now we're gonna be over with that I'm reinstating the need to have simple report that we can associate, because we're going back and forth and we don't know how much money goes where. So I reinstate that for me, and I'm talking for myself, and I know I'm not deciding for the council, I'm just one vote. I would love to see the report that I had requested at the beginning, which the first one, it's for the bylaw officer, not bylaw officer, I don't know what they call it, you know what I mean? And I want to see the one for the activity report for the animal control, and I want to see the COVID grant that we're getting and the other grants. So we don't have to go back and forth. When we see grant, we know we can study, because I spend, I don't know how many hours trying to figure it out. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And Alicia, you're doing a great job, but it would avoid ask every time that we go question. And one thing I'm going to say, I cannot vote on something just on what I'm saying. I need to have answer to the question that I'm asking. So for me, it's very difficult. So right now, like I said, I support having bylaw officer. That's very clear.
So,
I mean, well, Jay, can I finish?
Well, I think the point though, that you've made the point. So I think the point's made. I think you want to ask, because I don't disagree with your point. I just think that one at a time, right now is the time to talk about having more detail in an activity report for bylaw enforcement. And does the rest of council agree? And then we just move on. Animal control, you make a point on animal control, we'll talk about that then. So right now we're at bylaw enforcement, and both you and the mayor have made a request for additional info, and so that you can really assess how we're doing bylaw enforcement and at what level and whatever. So you want more info. So is there council concurrence on that? That's all.
Excuse me, Jay, I think I did request at the beginning and you said to ask at the end. My request at the beginning to avoid having to wait to make decision or something like that. So
Right.
those are the requested
So-
report.
So Lise,
So-
you're at, what I said at the beginning is once we get to the point, ask the question and then see if you have concurrence for us to do it. Right now is the time for bylaw enforcement. Do 5 people want to have that report? My suggestion
Okay,
is to
so
make
what
sense.
I want to add to make sure, Jay, that might be a problem when it's time to accept the budget, because I will not vote on something that I don't have. That's my stand, and I need to say it
Yeah,
because
you-
I'm
yeah, you
looking for
said that.
information.
Yeah, Lise, you said
Okay.
that. So my,
Okay.
my point is, do you have concurrence from your council to have that report?
You know what, Jay, we shouldn't even ask that question because any counselor around this table have the right to any information.
Well,
I asked information to Alicia.
Some
I went
information
back
you
to,
asked.
excuse me, Jay.
Can we move on to COVID-19 and
Yeah.
after that we'll wrap up with that?
Well, you know, in fairness, Joanne, I think at bylaw enforcement, I have to be a little more firm. At bylaw enforcement, if there's a need for an additional report that you want brought back before you make a decision, is there council concurrence? It's a simple question, and I think it's a valid question. And I support it in this case, absolutely. Because there are levels of decision-making you need to have. Do you want to have the same amount of bylaw enforcement, given the fact that you don't have a grant? Well, I need to see more info. That's a fair statement. I'm just saying, is there council concurrence? That's all.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair,
Yes, Conseiller Denis.
with all due respect, I don't think we have to vote every time we need some sort of information. Somebody's asking for a report, give them the report. Why do we need to have a vote every time, Mr. Barbeau?
Because sometimes the report may or may not be necessary depending on that, and you're asking staff to incur staff time and resources. And so I would like to make sure that it's actually a council request. If you're asking for a report, if you're asking a question, that's fine. But if you're asking for a report, I'd like to make it a little bit more, to ensure that there's council concurrence. That's all.
So,
Yeah, and
Jay,
we
just
agreed
to
that we would vote on that at the end.
We're going to move on to COVID-19 and we'll come back to the report issue right after.
Where's COVID-19?
Well, we have a COVID-19, right? We just want
Yeah, it's
bylaw
3:47, Madam Mayor, and I mean, we're getting tired, and you know what happened when we're getting tired. Do we have time
Okay,
to get into that?
It's a one-pager, so if you want to proceed, Madam Chair, it's one-pager, and that is part of general government.
Okay, so Alicia, back to you. Can you,
Page
talk about it?
23. Conseiller Lise.
Yeah, it is page 23. So obviously in 2020, we didn't have a budget for COVID because we had no idea what we were getting into. Oh, I've lost you guys. Hang on. The miscellaneous income that you see at the top is a combination. There's a very little bit of it that is connected to the province provided top-up wages to frontline individuals working in COVID. So some of our employees actually counted for that. So we got a small bit of income that flowed through to our folks that have been working directly at the assessment center, dealing with patients coming in. The remainder of that and the bulk of that is actually a portion of that $900,000 of COVID relief funding that we received. And that's what's sitting in the miscellaneous income. Salaries and wages and benefits is a combination of employees. So early in the COVID period, we actually redeployed our folks from community services. We redeployed some of our corporate services staff, including management, and then we redeployed bylaw. So all of their wages are sitting in this line as opposed to sitting in the departments because we were allocating funds to where, and I should take that back. And we have also obviously all of our community service maintenance staff doing the cleaning at the facility, and that's a large part of it. By the fall, we actually had dedicated clerks working at the assessment center as part of our partnership with West Nipissing General Hospital, in addition to the continued maintenance staff working there. And then the supplies and the operating costs, some of that is advertising that we needed to take out to talk about changes that were going on due to COVID, IT that was necessary in order to get through it. We've got phone lines that we provide at the assessment center. And then, as I said, sort of PPE and specialized cleaning supplies across all of the departments. When I look at 2021, then I've taken again an assumption that I'm going to use, we still had some remaining balance of that 900,000 carrying over, and I'm applying it to this budget first, as opposed to the other departments. We put in salaries and wages again at an assumption that the assessment center or some part of it runs for the year, and we don't know what that will look like as the year rolls on, and how fast vaccines get to our area and how effective they are, and what that means for the assessment center versus vaccine clinics. But I've made an assumption that we will have staff at that facility in some capacity for the year. And then again, the big part of the part is just supplies, and that we're going to continue to need to provide significant PPE and enhanced cleaning supplies to all of our departments as we roll through this next year. And so that's why you see it's kind of a net zero all the way around, because we've applied that funding to it to make sure that it's not a net cost to the taxpayer then.
Okay, gotta go around. Conseiller not Denis, but Zoin. Ton mic, Conseiller Yvon.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Now, I think it's Conseiller Larrabee. Fisher. You know why, Christopher? I forgot, Christopher, to add you on my list.
Okay, so I just have two questions. Conceptually, and when I look at COVID-19, really this stuff, so I can think of it as, this is from an HR perspective, this is the salaries and wages that we incurred that just for COVID-19, and I can really conceptually think of this as COVID-19 overtime. Is that fair as a first question, Elisa?
It's not overtime, because we do have sort of dedicated bodies there now, but it is HR costs that we would not have been incurring without this going on.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Second question. So in terms of like the things, changes we did to the building, I don't see anything under capital expenditures, but we did make changes to facilities and stuff like that. So and I don't see anything in like I thought we were looking at HVAC stuff. And just, I mean, it's maybe not COVID-19 related after all vaccinated, but it's just general health stuff. And I don't see any capital expenditures there, and that puzzles my brain.
Yeah, so the things that we did do, like the plexiglass and things like that all is just sitting in supplies, because it wasn't a substantial amount. You will recall that we had applied for some funding that we haven't heard on yet for some HVAC upgrades at the complex that you said support both the COVID and the general health. You'll see those when we get to Steph's facilities and capital there. But not overall to all of our facilities. We haven't got that in the books.
Thank you.
Okay, Conseiller Larrabee.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, Conseiller Mallette.
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you.
Conseiller Revida.
Just in case I missed this, Alyssa, the salaries and wages is a catch-all, right?
Catch-all for.
Sorry.
So no, what do you mean by catch-all, Councilor Revita?
Well, I mean, there's a certain amount of money that we expended on COVID, and it's monies that is designated or was line object to COVID. So it's like a catch-all. It's like is, for instance, if you had somebody working at the assessment center that you had to move over there, then it would be part of a big budget.
Yeah, so if we had, and I'm gonna take it, we had our AP clerk here, rather than sitting in general government, when she was over there, her salaries and wages went over there with her. Yes.
Okay, so it's a catch-all. Thanks. That's okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so Madame la Mairesse?
Nothing specific to the information provided. I still stand behind that. I still want to get an overview of the total funding and how it's being expended and related to the different departments, just a fact sheet to simplify it.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a question for the catch-all, whatever, like the amount for HR, Alicia.
Madam Chair, I have no, Madam Chair.
Oh,
I have no
I'm sorry,
comments.
Conseiller Denis.
Okay,
Okay.
I have no.
You
I
are
have
the
no
only one I
comments.
didn't forget, so I don't want them to think that I'm playing favorite, so
No,
sorry, I apologize. I miss all
Okay.
of you at one point of time.
Okay, I have no comments.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so my question is the catch-all from what Conseiller Dan was talking, Alicia. So if the amount of one for the, let's say that we're gonna, one of IT staff went and the time she was spent was $1,000, for example. So it's here, the $1,000 will be there, right?
Correct.
Was it added to the regular budget for
No.
next year, for 2021? So,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
The second thing I wanted to ask, what you're showing us right now, the total of 200, then 299, 2,100, 200, well, you know what I mean? I'm
Yep.
so tired, okay? That you spend in 2020.
Yep.
So that's part of the $900 that we have from the
Correct.
government, okay?
Yes.
So that doesn't show in which department that money was allocated. It's just showing in which part of the budget that was.
So it shows in 3 departments. So you'll see some of it here in COVID. You will have seen some of it in corporate services, and you will see some of it in community services when we get there. And it's all labeled as a separate line as COVID funding. And so that's just in the other ones, yeah.
So as a professional and an expert, you have to agree that it's kind of hard to try to follow a little bit of slice there and a little bit of slice there. But I mean, I really no, but it's true, right?
I do appreciate what you're saying, but yeah.
Yeah, so and that's the way it is. So then I guess so is there another no question? We gotta go. It's almost 3 minutes, and if we do a vote, I'm going to anything we go to vote, I want a recorded vote because I want people to know when I have information who's going to support it or not. And that's we go with everybody when you have something to do. I think it's very important that we have a recorded vote. So who's going to handle the vote that we should be doing? So we had report on the table. Jay, you want to go through the report and then we go around and Mel, I'm sure Mel is there very patiently. You must miss not talking, Mel, eh? No way.
Madam Chair, I was trying to
Yes.
speak, but unfortunately, I was still on mute. I did keep track of what we've discussed as we move forward, but I was just wanting to make sure that I wasn't omitting anything, and hopefully staff can help me. The HR report, that was answered. We got the detail. Alyssa provided it and had all the details. So put that off the list. There's the issue about a grant list, finding out, what are the various grants and expenditures and what's left as far as balance, and maybe footnotes to which department they relate. That was one issue.
Yeah.
The other one was with bylaw enforcement, having an understanding of the activity report for the year, to have constructive decisions on whether or not if you want to expand on the volume of service, consider, addressing needs that have been articulated out there in the community or keeping status quo. That was one issue. The other issue was pertaining to capital project for policing, but I believe we're going to deal with that once we get to policing. And the other one for animal control, that is also in another department. However, it doesn't preclude that we have an agreement, a contract that we need to renew with them, right? And it doesn't preclude the fact that we should have an idea what we're paying for. So if it's already been articulated, I'll leave it up to staff to see if they want to be proactive on that request or deal with it when we deal with it at budget. But so far, that's what I've recorded. Did I miss anything?
No, so you want, if I can just move things along because it's at the end.
Yeah.
So you want to break down a report breaking down grants and how it's distributed and so on. If I can, we'll record who's against it. Is anybody against that? No, so that report will come. Then there's a report on bylaw enforcement, more of an activity report, so you can get the assessment of that. Is anybody against providing that report? No. So those two reports that you've asked for, Madam Mayor, will happen as soon as we can do it, and hopefully as soon as possible, so we can put one or two to rest. The other report, oh, you want animal control? My recommendation on animal control is
No. I wasn't, sorry, Jay. Animal control was highlighted. I said, if you want to be proactive, go for it. If not, we're going to deal with it when it comes back to budget in that department. That's what I stated for animal control.
So can I just make a comment on that? So because it's a little bit different than, because there's no budgetary decision on animal control at this time. I think it's an operational decision for future. So what I'd recommend is that be added to a council meeting and have an animal control discussion at council. Because right now you have one line in the contract and that's not going to change no matter what you talk about. It's not a budgetary discussion. It becomes a how do you want to handle it in the future discussion. And I think there's a lot more to talk about. So I'm not in disagreement that you need the info. I'm just saying that this format may not be the proper venue.
Okay. Councillor Elise?
Well, Jay, what you're saying, okay, because we got to review the contract in 2021. So really we shouldn't even look at it because there's no discussion to be had right now. So that would be at council. Okay, now I understand. I thought that.
So, and I think, and we need, because there are some serious issues and we need to bring that forward. And so we shall be bringing that forward to you prior to renewal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so that will resolve that one issue, and I totally agree. There's pressing issues with that, but the reason I lifted my finger was I did omit one. It had to do with the dedicated reserves, the specific dedicated reserves, knowing which one had been there for ages with no constructive plan, and that'll be a strategic discussion for council to consider those amounts and see what they'd like to do with those amounts. That was the other report.
Yeah.
There was question to be answered,
right? Not
report.
Yeah, and to on Lisa's point, I didn't even consider that because that one's just a question to be answered. You're not asking for a full activity report that may or may not be necessary in everyone's mind. So on that one, Your Worship, I agree. It's an easy one to do, and we'll say these things here have been frozen that quickly. So it's an easy thing to do. That's just part of budget, giving you more info.
That's right. Okay, so that pretty well sums it up. If there's not any other omissions from our discussions this afternoon. So that means that this will conclude our first meeting for today. Pardon?
Yvonne was sending.
Okay, Cosi Yvonne.
You're off, Yvonne. Well, not you, your mic.
Cosi Yvonne, you're still on mute. If you can.
There we go.
Okay.
Something showed up on the screen. I couldn't get to it. Okay, I just wanted to point out Councillor Dan brought a question up, and he made a good point, and I would agree to that. Is that we have buildings that are being paid off by means of rent. And Jay, it'd be something great to have put on paper so that we could know exactly what we have and what is being paid off by the form of rent, the revenue. It's, it's revenue neutral. So I would agree with that. If we'd had a list of that, that would be great, man. That would certainly help us understand where we're at with our buildings and how they are being paid for through means of a rental agreement. I wouldn't want to forget that. Thanks. Thank you, Madam Medes.
Okay. And on that note, I think that should be probably easy information that can be shared to members of council. So this will conclude our first meeting. Our next meeting is forecasted, if I'm not mistaken, for Wednesday. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Wednesday from 1 to 4 again this week? Just a reminder that if ever anything changes pertaining to availability, please notify the clerk, the CEO, or myself, just in case, because we want to be able to make sure that we do have fruitful discussions and not have to repeat discussions if we're not, the majority of council here. And when I say majority, beyond the 5, like Jay put down on his memo, it's great that we are at least minimum of 6. 75% in attendance for these deliberation discussions. So would there be a volunteer for a mover and a seconder to be able to adjourn this meeting? Conseiller Chris, Conseiller Leo.
And Mel, can you stay after? I got a question for you.
It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Mallette. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-10, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of council at its budget meeting held on the first day of March 2021 shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Any objections? Aucune objection? No? Adopted? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Mallette. Be it resolved that the budget meeting of council held on March the 1st, 2021 be adjourned.
Okay. Any objections? None? Carried. Adopted. Thank you and goodbye for this afternoon till our next meeting. Goodbye.
Bye.
Mel, before you go home, call me at 0872.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Before you go home, can you call me at home? 0872?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So Mel, the question I had for you is, will I be able to pick up my package tomorrow? Because today I couldn't.
Yeah.
For council meeting tomorrow night.
Oh, you don't have your package? Yeah, just go to the back. Just buzz me from the back, the same as before. Chantel's usually sitting there.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't have a chance to go today, so I want to make sure it was still available tomorrow.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Mel?
Bye.
Yes,
No, so-
yes, Yvonne.
Okay.
Everybody wants something from me today.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't talk, Mel. We
missed
didn't talk. We missed you.
No, you know what? Once a year, I love budget time because I get to just listen for a change.
Well,
So
you're a good listener because you seem that you were listening. I
same with
know, I
Ellen.
know.
Jesus. No, I charged my iPad
Mhm.
completely. Now
Mhm.
we've had what, two hours, I guess?
Yeah.
I'm at 24%.
Yeah,
We
when they
had
get a
3
little bit,
hours.
does it feel warm? Do you have you closed your other apps? Like
I don't know.
sometimes if you don't properly close your apps, you gotta flick them. You gotta flick it up and you'll see there's a bunch of windows open. Because what happens is you open an app and if you don't close it properly, you end up with like hundreds of apps open in the background and they suck a boatload of the data. Zoom, the video sucks data like crazy.
Okay.
So it stands to reason that it's going to really deplete. Do you have a plugin that you can plug in during like meetings so that you can charge it or keep it plugged into an outlet?
You know
Yeah.
what's wrong, eh? Like that, and I don't know why they do it, but now where I plug in my earphones
Yeah.
is where you plug in to charge it.
Oh,
So,
shit.
That's why I have my earphones.
That's why you
like-
got to get yourself some AirPods. I got a pair of those AirPods for Christmas, those wireless headphones. They are the bomb diggity.
So that would work with even if I have it plugged in.
Yep.
For
Now, do you
charging?
have what kind of a outlet do you have on your earphones? They've got the little dongle
It's-
thing, eh?
Yeah,
Little
it's just-
adapter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just-
and they took away the headphone jack, yeah.
And
So
that's-
you either gotta get some wireless headphones, or you're gonna have to, just make sure that you're at 100% and then, take off your earphones and just listen manually if you have to charge it.
Yeah, you know what, actually, I could probably, and I know.
Or we can never have any meetings more than 3 hours, and I'd vote for that.
You know what happens, eh?
Yep. Yep, yep,
Oh,
yep.
no, we don't want to go any further than that. All right, thank you very much, Mel.
No
you have-
problem. Bye-bye.
Safe,
See-
bye-bye.
Bye.